Is yours recording, John?
Mine is recording.
Excellent.
Hang on, hang on,
Welcome. Oh, fucking
hang on.
hell.
Oh, fucking hell, Lee. You've already wasted half an hour of my morning.
That is actually true, if not an hour.
I
Welcome.
wasted fucking 5 hours of my day yesterday putting this clunky PowerPoint together, you fucking slags.
That's not a waste. That's what we pay you for.
That's exactly what the Patreons pay you for as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Welcome to Heresyhammer. I think I'll keep that bit in. You can see
Yeah, you can see the bullshit I have to
the
put up.
friction between the team when we aren't recording. Welcome. I think this is episode. I want to say episode 12. Is it episode 10? Episode
Yes.
12?
I think so, yes.
And today, rather excitingly, we are going to be looking at Primarchs. But before we do that, this is the three of us, and we'll talk about why it's three in a moment. So we've got Lee, who's at Death from the Shadows. We've got John, who's at D6 Miniatures, and myself at Medas Miniatures as well. Sadly, we in this episode are saying goodbye to Paul. Paul won't be joining us for this episode, and he won't be joining us for further episodes as well. He will be bowing out from kind of the end of November onwards. He's going to help us out a little bit with the event that we've got happening in Hampshire. But after that, he's no longer with the Heresyhammer team. I think it was mainly down to the pressure from Salamanders players that we got. That kind of the Salamanders group seemed to have created a hate campaign against Paul, and as a result, the bad publicity for him meant that he had to just sort of bow out. He couldn't have it.
Death threats.
Yeah, it was not good. Arson was threatened as well on his house in a sort of a typically Salamanders way. So
Yeah.
To shave his eyebrows off.
yeah, exactly. So
He
unfortunately,
absolutely Liz trust it. It's roundly bullied out.
absolutely. So it's really sad to say goodbye to Paul, but the show must go on. And on our next slide, we shall say thank you to our sponsors. So don't forget our affiliate link through Cryptic Cabin. I think this weekend we are going to be Paul is going to be announcing one of his last duties will be announcing the three winners of our prize draw, because Cryptic Cabin gave us some Mark 6 Marines, a Kratos and a Praetor to give away. So thanks to those guys. But don't forget to use the affiliate link if you need to make any pre-orders like the Liber Imperium that dropped today. And also myself, Medas Miniatures, as well, is one of the sponsors of the show. If you are interested in a commission from myself or, in fact, D6 Miniatures as well, just get in contact with either of us.
Please do not contact me. I am
Okay.
so tired.
Just contact me.
Just contact Rob.
Yeah, and we will get you hooked up with a commission. And that takes us to the main part of the show and just talking about exactly what we're talking about, which is we're going to be looking at Primarchs today. So we decided to just sack off for this one episode our kind of deep dives into the legions. We'll carry on with that on our next episode, but we thought we'd take a look at Primarchs because all legion players will be interested, I'm sure, in their special characters and particularly their Primarchs, their daddies running with their boy bands. So we're going to be having a look at a holistic view of Primarchs rather than a deep dive on every single one today. We're going to be looking at how to transport them, whether you should use them in Death Stars, whether you should run them on their own, who's got the best weapons, kind of army list building, what synergizes well, as well as our top three Primarchs. So we've each gone away and we've looked at who we think are the best three. It could be on any number of factors. We'll discuss that later. But we've kept that hidden from each other as well. So we'll see if we've all chosen the same ones, Horus across the board or not. So we shall wait and see. But looking forward to this one. I know Lee's putting a lot of work considering he never plays any games and never ever plays with Primarchs either.
No, I think we've all become, certainly in our kind of various groups that we're a part of, we've all sort of become quite Primarch curious recently. I think it's the time is the meta is settling a little bit, and I think certainly from my perspective, I've got a lot of events coming up where you can't take special characters, and that always leads me to think, oh, I can't take Primarch.
Yes.
I've also been painting mine, which also
always inspires as well. But we will take a look if they are any good, whether they're worth their points or not in this episode today. But let's have a look at our hashtag. Oh no, sorry. Oh, here we go. Fucking Lee waffling on for about half an hour about things we got wrong. Lee, I'm going to pass the mantle over to you on this one because I can give a shit whether we've got things wrong or not. So, but you do care quite quite a lot about this. So do you want to talk us through what we got wrong on the last episode?
Yeah, so this one we kind of fucked up quite a lot. We were like, yeah, just run Russ, because like, then you can charge.
Yeah.
And then someone was like, yeah, Russ isn't infantry, you dickhead. So he doesn't fucking get that. So
I mean, he is by his very nature infantry.
So, but it's interesting because in first edition, all Primarchs were infantry. They had the raw top infantry, which I hadn't even realised. So yeah, Russ cannot move, run, and charge, but he does get +1 weapon skill when he does charge, making him fucking weapon skill 9 on the charge.
I can't recall from yesterday, but I don't remember anybody natively being weapon skill.
No, 9. eight is the native.
It's
cap.
the top.
The top of the tree. It's when someone gets to double figures in terms of weapon skill. That's when we've really got to sit up and pay attention.
So pick or choose what you want. I suspect that being weapon skill 9 is particularly useful against other Primarchs. Then really, so you want to get the charge off. On that one, so you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul on that rule, really, aren't you?
No, Paul doesn't like paying. That's the whole
sorry.
Really fucking Paul doesn't like it when things become successful. That's just to bow out and leave. So.
Exactly right. There are other rules though, Lee. You were desperate.
So this is where it becomes all very second edition. So. Again, we said in that if you're coming in from outflank, then we were saying you can charge from vehicles, and people were saying you can't charge from vehicles. And we had a discussion in one of our chat groups, and basically no one has a fucking clue. So if you read the rules to the assault vehicle, it says passengers disembarking from access point on a vehicle, this special rule can charge on the turn they do so unless the vehicle arrived from reserves that turn. Reserves, not flanking assault,
right.
Reserves. So this is how I read it, but it is completely open to interpretation. So reserves is when you put units in reserve and they come on from your table's edge.
Mm-hmm.
Reserves flanking assault, or as you see at the bottom, as it's referred to in index, simply flanking assault. You can assault from the turn you arrive on the table. Units that have moved onto a battlefield as a part of a flanking assault may not move or run again in the current movement phase, but may shoot and assault as normal. So where it gets a bit confusing is flanking assault. They've put the word reserves in front on the rule book. However, every other place that I've seen this rule mentioned, it simply calls it flanking assault. It doesn't call it reserves flanking assault. And I'll give you an example here is Jagati Khan's rules. When held in reserve, do not roll, blah, 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 to be part of reserve. Instead, where does it say? So it talks about being able to bring him on from reserves, and then it says if Jagati Khan is part of a flanking assault or a deep strike assault. So it talks about all these things separately.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is flanking assault is a separate rule from reserves.
Yeah.
Only certain units can carry out flanking assaults, whereas every fucker can do reserve, pretty much. So that's the way I look at it. I don't know if you guys agree. But...
I think that there is lots of logic behind what you said, but I think that the one word that really fucks it up is the reserves in front of the flanking assault, doesn't it? So yeah, so perhaps some clarity from Forge World in an errata or an fact would be really, really good. But if you play it in a certain way, let us know below, because we'd be curious to see what your reading of that rule is. I think by virtue of the fact it says the word assault in it, it kind of suggests to me that you should be able to assault from it. But there are lots of things in the game that have assault in its title, and it's in fact not an assault vehicle. John, do you read it the way Lee reads it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Good.
I mean, I do, but I'm also not sure I actually agree with it.
You think it's too powerful?
It caused such a commotion in the group chat this week of people just. I think it was really a 50-50 split of people that want to. I kind of feel like, unfortunately, this is one of the things that EOs need to kind of clarify in their event pack of like,
Right.
this is how we're going to, we had a spate a little while ago of how the clarity of how people were going to perform return fire reactions.
Yeah.
I think this just needs to be, we are going to play flanking assault or assaulting from reserves like this.
Yeah.
I think people just need to, if you're running an event, just bear in mind that you might genuinely have 50% of your player base playing it one way and 50% playing the other way, and it will cause grievances.
It definitely will, because it's quite strong. Although, so I haven't played against anything really that's kind of had flanking assault previously.
Nor
But
have I.
my understanding was that you basically place a marker from where you're going to be kind of outflanking from, and then you can come in. You come in from that point. So it does. You are able to, as an opponent, you are able to predict where your opponent's going to come on, and then you might need to make maneuvers away from that area in order to shut down a potential assault. Unless you're playing Space Wars and they can get fucking halfway across the board. Right?
The way I see it is that you can assault from deep strike.
Yeah.
So why can't you assault from a flanking assault?
Yeah. Fine. I think that it's very logical what Leah said, but I also think it's really fucking strong. Like,
it's mentally strong, and if you play legions that do that sort of thing rather than just standing back and shooting, they're a little bitch anyway. So
but then it's also, I suppose, it is really strong, but also so is Interceptor, right? And you can intercept shit off the board. So so cool. Okay, thank you for that, Lee. Let us know what you think in the comments below. I think there's a third one of rules correction, isn't there? Or is that it? Oh, super. So
it's just onto the good shit.
So Lee has scoured Heresyhammer. Well, scoured is probably the wrong word, because there's loads of shit on there to pick.
Over 3,000 now.
That is nuts. That's crazy. So keep on using the hashtag Heresyhammer. So the first one, we've got a Legion, I think, support squad, so heavy support squad from @Noise Marines, and by the looks of things, it looks non-metallic metal, which is, I think, a very ambitious thing to achieve. So a lovely squad there, and some lovely bases from @Unreal Wargaming. We've got at Mostberg Minis. Is that? I think I assume that's how
Mostberg. I think is
Mostberg. Right.
Linus is the chap behind it.
So a friend of mine and John's here from a chat group that we're on, and he's got some really, really unique but lovely looking Night Lords, and these ones I think are actually some 3D printed. These look a little bit taller, don't they? These are 3D printed, these ones. But he's got an awesome Night Lords army. It looks absolutely stunning. So really worth checking out if you're a Night Lords player.
I'm calling it. I'm going to say they're the world's best Night Lords.
They are
I'm
great.
Stick my neck out and say they are. Yeah. If you want to have any inspiration, if you're thinking about starting some Night Lords, or if you already started some Night Lords and you're kind of running out of steam a little bit, just go and have a little look at Linus's work. It will give you such a huge amount of impetus to get on and get your own shit finished, because they're just so fucking good.
Yeah, they are. They are tres good.
Give me the shivers.
Yeah, let's have a look at the next one, then, please, Lee. So, I've seen this floating around the internet an awful lot, but a very, very cleverly designed tank. So it's got the sides of the Achilles, I think, but I think the central element is actually 3D printed. It's almost like a mini Mastodon, I suppose. And then it's kind of been stuck together, and it works so effectively for a brutal Land Raider tank. So that's from that company, Bit Orion. And I think, from my understanding, he did this kind of as a last. He kind of built it, started painting it, but he had to get a few more points ready for an event, so he kind of just knocked it out, and it's been super popular and taken the internet by storm. It's really kind of brutal looking. It's the kind of thing, Lee, I think you would go for in terms of like the aesthetic.
I fucking love this. It looks so brutal, doesn't it? I only quickly read it, but he's done a little fluff bit for it of like how it's all kind of like dark technology, and all the guys inside are all in like cryostasis or some shit. I don't really remember what he wrote, but if you want to go and have a read, it's definitely worth having a read. So, but yeah, this just looks fucking awesome, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah,
it's so
God,
cool.
it's so good.
Yeah, really, really good. And
so fucking good.
and I think I think I've said it previously on the show, but just like 3D printing is just the future of our hobby. Like, there's no two ways about it. Like, in the next 10 years, we'll all have 3D printers, and Games Workshop will just sell files, I think. And I think this is just a really good example of how far 3D printing has just come on. So we got a friend at Angel Bearer. So he's been featured on the channel before, but he's been doing some really interesting green stuff work.
It's like marzipan.
It does look a bit like it. Does look rather tasty.
Yeah. Marzipan's not tasty, by the way. I'm just going to clarify that.
What the fuck? That's delicious. What
disgusting.
No,
what?
On that.
My opinion of you has changed instantly, Rob.
That's the best
I think
part
you should
about
leave.
Christmas cake. If anything, I would only eat the marzipan on a Christmas cake and forget the icing.
I think you should just take yourself outside and have a word with yourself, mate, and come back in when you've thought about what you've done.
Sorry, I don't believe this. Anyway, right.
Awful.
More importantly, we've got some delicious marzipan on a rather brutal-looking dreadnought. Now, I assume it is for the word bearers, isn't it? I saw the horn and was like, oh, it's for some sort of plague marines, but it's not. In fact, it's for the word bearers.
I mean, the massive word bearer symbol on the sarcophagus.
It gave it away, didn't it? Yeah. Anyway, but more importantly, he's done an absolutely fantastic job, and it's great to see the work and love he puts into all his miniatures. Let's have a look at the next one, then, please, Lee. Oh, it's always good to see some army shots. I don't know what event this was, but it looks to be in a Games Workshop store, actually. But I'm not sure. But I certainly think that John will be a enormous fan of this, and it's really nice to see Medusas continuing in the wild as well, because you don't see much of those anymore. But I think a tank that is synonymous with the Iron Warriors, and I think you can do some great kind of hazard stripes on the kind of the front plates of them as well. So it's great to see.
They're just so bum. They're just. I mean, I've got literally. Hold on a second. If I reach up here, you can see I have 3 sat on my shelf, and they're just absolutely toilet. Like
like when you're tabling people turn 2, you could probably afford to add something that's a little bit shit.
I think that's probably a very fair point. Regulate yourself, John.
I am regulating myself by not taking the juices.
The legacy unit, regulating by ending your opponent's army in turn 2.
I heard all of the legacy units were overpowered, and that's why they were getting banned from events. So that's why I've deliberately not taken any in my list.
Fair play. Anyway, a really nice army, and something I would say about Instagram, if you want to boost your followers on Instagram, is that people fucking love army videos and army reels. So if you you just get your army out, do a couple of reels with it, post them up, and people will go bananas, and that will get you a couple of extra 100 followers, I reckon.
Nice.
So yeah, the more army photos, I found they're really kind of quite popular online. So make sure you get lots of army.
I'm not sure my Iron Warriors will fit on a 6x4 mat anymore. I kind of
I imagine
away with them.
I'd imagine your army's pretty fucking vast, actually. Yeah, definitely.
Right now,
let's have a look at the next ones, please. The gentleman's choice here. So at Trefoil Legions, a rather lovely, very vibrant Imperial Fist force. It's great to see the mix of Mark 6 and Mark 4, which I still think it holds its own. We've seen lots of these, but it's just so great to see everything in fucking plastic, because it's so much nicer to deal with.
I'm really kind of hopeful. Do you know what I'm hopeful? I don't know Trefoil Legions, but I'd like to know if he's a new player to Heresy.
Yeah.
Because this smacks me of this amazing point in time where you're kind of like starting a new force.
Yeah.
And you kind of get a bit done. You've got your compulsory troops. You've got a dread, a tank. You know, you've got your HQ, and you kind of get it all together. And you think, I can play a game now. Like I can get out there and play. And I think this is super. We're seeing so many more of these, and it's just a super exciting place. We are in the second golden age of Heresy, and I think it's really showing and telling.
I really am looking forward to almost like the next huge wave of plastics for Heresy, because I think a few things drip, but like I think I sense that something kind of another wave will be coming soon. This person has done the opposite of what I do, which is I never ever start with my 2 troops choices. I always leave them to the end. and then do all the
The,
fancy
the
stuff and the
worst
tanks and the
thing
troops.
to do.
Absolute worst. Do not do that. Start with
No.
your choices. Yeah.
I mean, I've been playing Heresy for about 10 years and I've never completed more than one troop's choice. Just ride the Legion. It's fucking easier.
I'll tell you what, though, it is the absolute antithesis of like, is this my Legion? Is if you can sit down. So when I started mine, whereas I painted, the first thing I painted was 60 Tank Marines.
Yeah, okay.
And I was I was still enthused about the army after I'd painted 60 Tank Marines
in
one go.
You've got the backbone there, right, as well. Because your enthusiasm is peak at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everything else you then paint, you can immediately add in and game with. Yeah. So that's the way.
A very wise way to do it. Don't do it like me and Lee, which is
don't do it like
good stuff and then get bored of it by the end.
Definitely don't do it like Lee. You never get anything paid.
Right, lovely. Let's have a look at the next one. I think that's right, excellent. So a really wonderful tank by Mars from that Little Legend Studio, a man who I think kind of has really defined kind of what Heresy looks like, I think, over the past few years. I think many people who follow him would agree as well. But he's been working on this Kratos for some. I'm sure he's had it probably since kind of when it came out in April, whenever the fuck it drops. But a really cool Sons of Horus looking tank, and it's really nice to see Mars's force expanding. I saw he did a reel the other day where he's got 40 Mark 6 Marines, right, that are all converted and look really cool.
They look
like they look awesome. But I know that he was really keen to add some infantry to his kind of just there in force, which he did for Return to Isfahan. And I think he's also used this on a couple of ones as well, which is the Adeptus Titanicus Legio Volpa transfers as well. So I think using different transfers from different transfer sheets often looks actually quite cool, and the Adeptus Titanicus ones are a great scale, really highly detailed, because they're newer transfers as well. And I use particularly Adeptus Titanicus, like lots of wreaths, like laurel wreaths that you can use from them as well, if you're doing sort of like loyalist forces. So definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, the Legio Furians transfer sheet for Sons of Horus works really well. So yeah, it's completely agree. And it was only I found it I had a couple of spare Furians transfer sheets. I pulled them out the other day and I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, they're super. So definitely, if you want to spice up your tanks and your models, overlapping transfers or using some from various other transfer sheets works really well. I think for loyalists, the Adeptus Custodes transfer sheets with the filigree. The filigree and the kind of like eagle heads as well work really well. I probably wouldn't use a Palatine Aquila, but the eagle heads I think look really awesome. And then I think this is the last one, isn't it? So we've got Hair Poom. So this person, I think for all of us on here, this person was a real inspiration. So like 10 years ago when Heresy first started, I think me and Lee were talking about it the other day, and he either had a blog or he was on Bolter and Chainsword or something like that. And he was somebody I remember having a huge Heresy army, creating loads of really interesting conversions. And I remember, and Harry pointed it out yesterday, where he had a plasma support squad that was made up of like Medusan Immortals, and it was just like it just blew my mind. And he painted them in World Eaters color schemes, and lots of work he's done recently where he's painting red and white World Eaters on top of his kind of blue and white ones, and they look excellent. Is there anything you guys want to say about this? Because I'm sure he's been an inspiration to all of us.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got two of the kind of Heresy OGs featured here, haven't we, in Miles and Mr. Poom. And but I think Poom took a break from Heresy for a little while. I think even mainly posting Necromunda for about the last 2 or 3 years. But just great to see, like, genuinely one of the original. I remember it was kind of him and Kieran Douglas, who I kind of really remember kind of seeing a lot of stuff on Barter and Chainsaw when Kieran was doing his original Emperor's Children and his Alpha Legion.
Yeah. And
just being like his Emperor's Children. It's no exaggeration to say that he and I think it's Peter from Scars Miniature Madness over in Netherlands. They were the two guys who were just like drew me into playing Heresy. Like they were the two entry points.
I mean, that's why I put these two last. Like, as soon as I saw Harpoon stuff and he put the Heresyhammer tag, I was like, fucking hell, yeah, we've got to include this shit. Like you say, like Rob, I remember seeing his World Eaters, but also the main one for me was he did a Mechanicum Force.
Oh fuck yeah, he did. Yes, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Like all the thralls had skull heads. The Thalax had like the screen was smashed and you had skulls behind, or they had like skulls heads, because he does a lot of like resin casting. So he'll get a head and then cast off that head. Like fuck it, it was fucking brilliant. It was so good.
What I'm definitely not doing is just scrolling back through his Instagram feed at the moment. Absolute rod on right now. Yeah, fucking I completely forgot about his Mechanicum. Jesus Christ.
That was the thing that kind of made me want to do Mechanicum, was they just, and even now, like I was looking at, because I put this up on Instagram and then I went on Google and I was like, oh, because he's got some of his pictures on Instagram, but if you Google it, you'll find more. So if you're interested at all, I would advise just Googling Harpoon and you'll find a load of pictures from his Mechanicum stuff. And as I was looking at him, I was like, fuck, I want to do a Mechanicum Force now.
These people, man, they just encourage you to spend money. That's the problem.
Letting you behind the curtain every time Lee sees any of a miniature that isn't his. He's like, shit, I need to fucking do a force of that.
But they're so fucking good though. Like even just the color scheme, like it was fucking. But even like this Contemptor here, you know, like the chain fist thing is a conversion. Even just the head swap, that's a Dragio head.
Yeah, it is.
It's menacing.
Pick up on it.
Like, oh my god!
And it looks so cool, doesn't it?
I immediately just want to fucking good. Sack all of this fucking bullshit off and go and paint
some. I was looking at that head being like, that is just fucking awesome. Like that, like that World Eater head is fucking like, how have I not ever noticed that? But it's not a fucking World Eater head, is it? It's you're right. Is it the Leviathan head, or is it the Doradio?
No, I think it's the Doradio. It could be Leviathan. I'm pretty sure it's the Doradio.
Yeah, I think that the one final thing I would say about kind of all of this is that it's so tempting often, especially when you're a new player, but also for me as well, just to fucking build it as quickly as you can without any kind of conversion work, because you just want it built and it looks cool. Yeah. You're excited. But actually adding a few dangly chains, sticking a Leviathan arm on instead of a Contemptor one, it makes it unique, and it's all of an hour's work. Like adding a couple of chains on really takes 20 minutes, like, and then just leaving it to dry overnight and then painting it the next day. And these kinds of things, I think, they stand out because these guys go the extra mile. But the extra mile isn't that hard to achieve. I mean, he's just destroyed a Contemptor at the bottom. You know, I think it's the old plastic one, shoved it at the bottom or whatever, and then it just looks cinematic and really, really cool as well. So,
yeah, 100% agree. Like this is like I added some spikes and chains to like my Iron Warriors Contemptor,
a really good example,
and Spartan and the Kratos, and it took 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I think for me, the Sons of Horus, like Reavers, the chieftains with the skulls and the
lodge coins
and those things that I did, like I just spent a couple of evenings adding those chains on and skulls and things, and it was a bit of a faff, but it was enjoyable doing it, and like it was really popular. I was really proud of it, and it just kind of inspired me to kind of do a bit more conversion work here and there. So definitely worth just spending an hour on each project, is going, how am I going to make it a little bit different? But these two guys are definitely places to go have a look about how to make things a bit different.
Yep, agreed.
Awesome. Let's have a look at what has been released since we last met. So
boring.
We had the Predator options, the OG options, which was basically Predator cannon, the kind of like the double las cannon. And now we've got the more esoteric weaponry, and I think the slightly better weaponry that's come out with this Predator. They've made an interesting choice, I think, not to, although I might be making this up, but from my understanding, they've just released this as a kit rather than releasing the Sponson separately, although you might be able to find it on GW today because it's the pre-order day where they might just do the Sponson. But definitely when we did our breakdown of our Legion Predators, in our previous shows, I think that for me the plasma was probably the best. But it's a great looking tank, great options, worth picking up and having a look at our previous shows if you haven't, about our Tactica that we've done on the Predator. Let's have a look at the next one. So Night Lord's helmets, it was Halloween. Obviously that these were going to drop at the time. Not much to say about the Mark 6 kind of shoulder pads. I think they actually look quite cool, but again, I think transfers probably look better for me.
I think they look quite cool because like the symbol easily follows the shoulder pad, and it's massive as well. It's takes a lot of real estate on that shoulder pad.
That's the other thing, and I think that's a really good point, John, because the Forge World transfer sheet, because they're all done for Mark 3 and Mark 6, the symbol's quite small. And the Mark 6 transfers for the Sons of Horus and for Imperial Fist are way bigger and fit that space. So having that fitted on that space works really well. So that is a plus of it. And then we have these Mark 6 helmets. So I think they look pretty cool for a Terror Assault Squad or just any assault squad. They're a bit faffy fiddly to paint. I'm painting Night Lords at the moment. But they certainly look really sinister. Although for me, I think they look a bit bird-like rather than menacing skulls. But I think nonetheless, I think they look quite cool.
I think these are the best by far.
Of all we've seen.
Of all of the ones we've seen, I think these are by far and away the best. And I'll tell you for why. It's because they look the least Mark 6, especially in this kind of like frontal kind of position. I think these are by far. I think the Death Guard ones were good. I think these are the best. The Sergeant one with the bat wings is brilliant. And this is definitely helped by the paint job. I think this is definitely the best Bearhead we've seen so far.
I would suggest using that as Sevatar head.
100%. It looks fucking amazing. Or if you're doing like a Scrivok conversion, there's your head. I think these are fucking brilliant. I think both of these are absolutely phenomenal. I think if I was a Night Lords player and I had some Mark 6, I'd be absolutely over the moon. I think this is the first. I think we've seen some terrible stuff. Let's not beat around the bush. Like we have seen some absolute horseshit.
No.
Yes. And then I think the majority have been, to my mind, kind of take it or leave it. And I think these are an auto-include.
Yeah, I think the Iron Warriors ones are auto-includes as well.
I think the Iron Warriors
I don't think you're going to do Iron Warriors in Mark 6. I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, maybe. Lee, what's your thoughts on these ones?
Yeah, I like them. Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
But then I liked the other ones. Was it the Mark 4 ones they'd done?
Terror Assault heads.
Yeah, they were good as well.
So I mean, it's just another thing, isn't it? It's another thing to add a bit of
awesome
to your Night Lord's army.
Yeah, good. Fantastic. Right, let's have a look at the next things, because this was a particularly special.
I got all excited then.
So anybody who is a Solar Auxilia player or is Solar Auxilia curious, you are very lucky, because today the Liber Imperium dropped, and I think you can go check out various kind of videos about it. Guerrilla Miniatures, I was watching it before we started recording, kind of doing a deep dive. But one of the things about the Solar Auxilia range has been that they've been kind of slowly culling a lot of this stuff, partly because it's in resin, and I suspect that there will probably be a move to plastic at some point, but some of it was just really niche. And so like the Solar Auxilia guys hopping out of a tank hatch here, they went ages ago, but they've come back miraculously. They've come back, and whether this is just a short run, or whether it's because they brought them back because they're not going to do these in plastic, these particular lines in plastic, but you need them to supplement your force. I might be kind of more realistic, but they were amazing sculpts to start with. They're full of character, really intricate, really interesting models, and must-haves for Solar Auxilias. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything on top of that. But
you've said everything. I think even like the Medicae orderlies and the gurney. Like I think what you've basically just got yourself there is you've and obviously previously he was a character series model, but basically what you've got is you've got 4 medics.
Yeah.
You chuck the gurney and each one of the guys in a different squad, and you've essentially got a Medicae in each unit. They're brilliant sculpts. I think these are so flavorful. Like they're telling a story, and I think that's so super important. That's what makes some of this stuff kind of really flavorful.
Yeah. Absolutely. I also don't think there was anything to do with 3D sculpting on this as well. I think they were all hand sculpted, but I might be wrong about that. But I think that's why they look
good, aren't they?
so good. Let's have a look at the other things that were released late.
Just quickly, I really
Yeah.
like the grey and red color scheme.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was about to say when we came to the next slide that
yeah.
I really like this new aesthetic that they're going for with the
I think this is a like the Ash Scorpions or something like that. While you guys discuss this, Lee, why don't you talk us through kind of this and like the fact that Solar Auxiliars have been starved with this? I will tell you what this
essentially these kind of disappeared. What, like fucking 5-6 years ago was it? They just kind of stopped selling them. And I mean, for me personally, these are some of the best looking rapiers. Like that thud gun looks fucking wicked.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. The carriage was really well proportioned alongside the guy. I like the guy sitting in the kind of the seat.
Yeah, yeah.
I think this is a weird scenario as well. I had this discussion with someone, not actually reference to this, but some other stuff a few weeks ago. And this is one of the units because it's sat in the book and it was really quite good. Like it was a good way of giving access to artillery. We obviously had they had a Rapier laser destroyer carrier as well, which was kind of like a really, really good anti-tank weapon for the Solar Auxilia. And it was just a way of like pushing people towards recasters.
Yeah.
Because it was the only way you could get them.
So a prime example of this is I remember talking to David Brains of what was 30K channel.
Oh, yeah.
And he started the Solar Augs army. And he went into Warhammer World to buy a load of these rapiers and they'd stopped selling them. And the guy behind the store was like, well, just buy some Legion rapiers and just buy a squad of dudes and you've got it. And it was like, yeah, but that's like £1,000.
Yeah.
Like when you're starting an army, you don't want to see stuff disappearing because then you're thinking, well, what's the fucking point? If everything's just if you're stopping selling this, what else are you going to stop selling? And then having to buy, I mean, that's the only downside of this army is it is a massive investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I certainly like it has been, but I think that if you're unaware of this, this will be an interesting story. So they were looking not too long ago for kind of 3D sculptors at GW. And one of the guys, one of the tasks that GW set as part of the interviewing process was essentially to design some 3D sculpted Solar Auxilia models. And it was really interesting to see that was on the kind of like the interview spec, and that was one of the requirements in order to kind of, I assume, get to the next round or whatever. Because that also suggests to me that a big range of Solar Augs is coming, and that I suspect that the main guys, your HQ choices and probably the Dracasan are all going to be in plastic, whereas these kind of the stuff on the side, stuff to add to it, will remain within the Forge World kind of domain. But it will be cheaper to get an army than it once was. But those guys who spent like thousands and thousands will be spitting feathers because it was always a really high buy-in cost because you needed so many guys just to even get a sort of 2,000 point army.
I've got some about 4 or 5 squads of Velataris and it never got off the ground just because I was like, I'm gonna have to spend like £600 on Aurochs. I spent like your pound to point, your like money to points ratio is just so skewed with something.
But they you never saw them, I think, because of
no,
that.
it's because they
were one of the, if you could leverage it right and choose the right tanks, they were one of the most powerful forces in 1.0, I think. But it was just that they were just so expensive was the issue. But it is great to see them coming back because I think this is a heralding things to come, especially as we've got Liber Imperium coming, just dropping like today. So really, really exciting.
I just think these are such an iconic heresy human model. You know what I mean? There's nothing like this in 40K. They look so fucking cool.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, just fingers crossed that they bring some out in plastic because that would be fucking awesome.
So, and just to say about the color scheme, so this is the the Rust Scorpions color scheme, which is a cohort of the Solar Auxilia, and I suspect we shall see a lot of the Ash Scorpions. It's grey, red, and black. But I think that a good thing, and what we've seen previously, is that you almost have a grey, fairly standard grey scheme, and then some stripes in different colours to be kind of like your Solar Auxilia colours. And I think that tends to be a way that Solar Auxilia players tend to do it. So yeah, really cool. Really cool.
Fit as fuck scheme, that.
Yeah,
It'd be good to see some transfers for them coming out as well.
Oh man, yeah, because they're worth a gajillion pounds if you try and buy them now. So yeah, definitely that'd be great. Let's have a look at what's next, because I think that's probably the end of our. Now this was an interesting one. So it remains a really great tank. This the Scorpius. It's not called the Whirlwind Scorpius though anymore, is it? I think it's changed.
Just the Scorpius.
So the Legion Scorpius, it remains a really good tank in Horus Heresy. It was a really good tank in 1.0, and it remains so now.
I think it's gone better personally.
And they've released it in plastic. It went a few months ago, which probably is the sign. If it's missing off the site or has gone down, it's a sign probably that it's coming in plastic. And lo and behold, yesterday, really surprisingly, it's here, and it's a great looking tank, very similar to the Predator, but just with doors on the sides, and the turret. I didn't really have much to say on it really. It could be a resin copy, but it's great that it's in plastic.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great tank. Like, I think this is, I genuinely think it's got better than last edition. The fact you can squadron them now as well, it's even better.
Yeah.
And it's just such an easy win, isn't it? It's a Rhino chassis with a different front plate and a different turret that you can chuck on a sprue, chuck it in a box, charge it for 15 quid, and you're going to be on to a winner, because every army is going to have a couple of these.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
It's the same thing as like Land Raiders, you know.
Yeah,
everyone's going to buy a couple.
Yeah,
and because I've already got a couple. So, you know.
What was quite unusual about this release was that we hadn't seen any pictures about this, have we? Like, there were no pictures about this.
No.
And so they seem to have really got a tighter hold on leaks, because we'd seen quite a lot from leak pictures and things like that. But this was a complete surprise, but a very welcome surprise as well.
Yeah, one of the beauties, what I've done with mine is, so I've just used the standard plastic Rhino kit, and I've used from the Mars pattern, like Razorback, and just used that chassis part and left the doors like not glued it in, so that I can either run Rhinos or Whirlwinds.
I think that's a very wise idea. If you bought this and then I think you could probably make some sort of plate at the top as well to sit on top of the kind of the hole where this would be, but it would be very easy to turn this into a Damocles command Rhino as well, right? You could just
super
like
easy.
You could like for example, Liam, who me and Lee know really well, he found that Lego created quite a cool looking kind of like aerial array that didn't look out of place. He sprayed it, painted it up, and then stuck it on top of a Rhino, and it looked wicked. So if you're looking for a Damocles as well, you could maybe have a look at Lego and then see what they've got, because they'll put something in. And then just to add it to the top of this, because it's just basically the same tank. So yeah, really welcome, really exciting tank as well. So yeah, all right, next one. I think that's probably it for Heresy Thursdays, isn't it? Super. Right. So what we will do, we will take a quick break here before we go into the meat of our show, and when we get back, we will be talking the ins and outs of Primarch. So see you in a minute.
Are you recording, Rob?
Yeah. Welcome back to our main segment, where we're going to be looking at Primarchs today. So before we kind of get started, we're going to have a look at our views about Primarchs from version 1.0 to version 2.0. So for myself, I was always a big Primarch lover. I really like to build armies around Primarchs. So Sons of Horus, really good example. Horus could unlock Justarian and Veterans as troops, and Sanguinius, was it Sanguinius or maybe some others, but Perturabo could also unlock Terminators as troops as well. So it allowed you to, in 1.8, to create some really interesting list builds. And I think that one of my kind of things that I was a bit saddened by with this version of Heresy is that those list builds don't really exist as a result of Primarchs any longer. So that would be my kind of my first thing to say about them. Nonetheless, they do give some good army. They continue to give some good army-wide buffs, and they seem to be quite interesting to play with as well. What's your initial kind of thoughts on Primarchs before we get started into the deep dive? You know, what's your guys' views on them just kind of initially?
John's too busy eating.
I'm a lovely time.
I mean, to be honest, I've had nothing to do with Primarchs in second edition. Like, of all the games I've played, which is quite a few, which is not many now, no one's run a Primarch. But it's a weird one, isn't it? Because when I got into first edition, Primarchs were fucking everywhere. Like, you'd go to an event and you'd be, you know, the narrative would be, we're fighting over some backworld, you know, shitty little planet that no one cares about. But here are 18 Primarchs fucking fighting over it. You know, there's 5 Perturabos, 3 fucking Cursors, like,
yeah.
And it kind of got a bit nuts. So I think event organizers started kind of cutting down on it, didn't they? You know, only one Primarch could be taken per, you know, loyalist or traitor.
Yeah, and I feel that punishes people who don't spend that much time on Facebook or who are at work when that message went out, because what you have is the fastest finger first, and then that person then can't play with their boyfriend.
But what most EOs did was they just no characters, wasn't it? That just seemed to, and it really did kind of define the game, because when I first started playing, my first army was Raven Guard, and I run Korax, and I fucking loved him because he had a special rule where if he wasn't the closest unit, you could only snap fire at him, so he could run around on his own, just fucking murking units.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran World Eaters and I ran Angron, and then every army after that, I never ran a Primarch, because that's when it kind of got to the point where EO started restricting Primarchs, that it became a thing that I was just kind of like, well, there's no point building and painting one, because the chances are I'll never get to run him. So it did affect like my list building, because, you know, I mean, it was probably like 7 years ago maybe, like people started restricting characters, and from then on I've literally never run a Primarch.
Okay, and then John, let me ask you a different question. So, do you think that if you have brought a Primarch and your opponent hasn't, does it make for a positive gaming experience? What do you think?
No, I don't think it does. I am conflicted when it comes to Primarchs, because I think they are both incredibly cool and very fucking boring. I personally would not want to field a Primarch if my opponent didn't also have a Primarch.
Got it.
And I would not want to play a game against a Primarch if I didn't also have a Primarch. I feel like in the theatre of war, the Primarchs don't take to the field very often. Like when we hear about them in the books, it's very rare, and typically it's typically always Primarch on Primarch action, or like Sanguinius on Commander. You know, so I would be happy to, if I was going to an event that allowed Primarchs. I am quite Perturabo, kind of like I do want to use him now. Now that I've got him and I've got him painted, and I've got a massive army now. I've got like 10,000 points painted of my Iron Warriors now. So like I do feel like I have an army worthy of having Perturabo leading it as a complete like collection.
Yeah.
But if I was going to an event that allowed Primarchs, I would probably take 2 lists.
Yeah.
And I'd take a list that if my opponent turned up to the table with like, oh, I've got Vulcan. I was going Vulcan because I was playing Salamanders, for example. If my opponent's at the table with Lehman Russ, for instance, I would be like, right, I will Perturabo. I'd reach into my bag of Pokeballs and be like, Perturabo, I choose you. But typically, if my opponent didn't, I would pop him back in the pocket and play something else. I think that's how I would. That's how I would probably view it. That's so my view.
I think that in itself raises an interesting point, which is that often the only thing that can deal with a Primarch is another Primarch. So then what you have, if you and your opponent have both brought Primarchs, is you have often two Death Stars or the two Primarchs gravitating towards each other.
Good,
and,
as it should be.
Essentially locked in combat for the remainder of the game.
As it should be. That's you have the central conflict of the two Primarchs facing off against each other, and then you have everyone else doing what they need to do. Like, you know, people don't stand around and watch while two Primarchs battle it out. Like, it's a case of it's fire and ice, you know. It's the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object.
Absolutely, but I think the issue is that what you have in that situation is that your 3,000 point force with your Primarch and his boyfriends are basically smacking into each other. So that then becomes, you've actually really only got a 2,000 point army that you're really, really playing with. And then maybe you should have just said to your opponent, let's just play a 2,000 point game with no Primarch, right?
I think you're missing the point, actually, to be honest, Rob. I think you've
What's the point, though?
Well, I think that, like, it is exciting to play with your Primarchs. Like, the Primarchs don't get talked about that often. There's a lot of Primarch narrative of Primarchs sort of doing bits, going here, and sort of being in charge of a thing. But, like, they don't take to the field that often. And actually, like, I wouldn't want to go to an event and play like a Primarch for all 4 games. I think that would be pretty tedious. I think Primarchs are for Sunday best.
Fine,
but
okay. But what you're saying is that as a narrative piece within a game, it's quite cool to run
absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
Fine.
So
okay.
Just one thing on that. Like, I do think as well in first edition is that's also one of the reasons why people stopped running Primarchs.
Yeah.
Is because it did just turn into 1,000 points of your army fighting 1,000 points of their army. And all the dudes around them would die, and the two Primarchs would just punch each other for 5 turns, and then that was the end of it.
That's my kind of thoughts on it as well. Because what you've I know you said that I've missed the point, but the problem is that you had in first edition is that you had some quite cool list building options around Primarchs that made your army basically built around that Primarch. So Perturabo is a great example of where you had Terminators, deep striking from turn 1 for a longest period of time. And that was quite an interesting army build, but it hinged entirely around, say, like Perturabo being the list and Gold being in this, right? But then what then has happened is that so you had the army building element, and then what's then happened is that you've taken away the army building element in 2.0, and then what you've got is basically things that give a couple of buffs, give you an additional reaction, and then basically are just beat sticks. And I think that for me, I think something was lost by removing some of the more unique army building things around.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I think that they've become they're very, very tough, like end game bosses, but they're not necessarily.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it. I think we can both agree on that one.
They're necessarily the force multipliers they were, and I do think that's a bit of. And we'll come to it. Some of them are still quite force multiplier, but they tend to be a bit less end game boss, and then you've got some that are like super dick kickers, but don't really do a lot for the on. Like when we talk about kind of like the theatre of war and the Primarch's not really taking the field, like I just don't think you'd ever see a Primarch typically when there's not another Primarch involved. They always just send their first captain. Like I'm like the problem that I've got with playing Iron Warriors is the fact that my first captain hasn't got all my Triarchs, haven't got any rules, so that's a bit of a tricky one. But I would, if I was a Sons of Horus player, for instance, I would much rather play a game with Abaddon. And if I was an opponent of someone who had Abaddon and I had no special characters, I would have zero beef with that whatsoever, because that's what would happen. Like Horus would just send his first captain to like go and take care of this for me, because this is not important enough for me to get involved.
Exactly right. So I think that's a really good discussion. I think the other thing is that you can see within the world of Heresy, even between us, we have differing opinions about the Primarchs. And I think that's probably a good thing.
And some are right, some are wrong.
As well. So, and I think it does probably depend on your meta as well. So we won't kind of look at too much about the first edition rules, but one thing I would say before we have a look at the actual kind of base rules that come with the Primarchs is that the other massive change that occurred within the Force organization chart on 2.0 was that you can take a Lord of War and a Primarch as well now, but you're getting into sort of the realms of 5,000 points if you want to be able to do that. So the Primarch filled the Lord of War slot previously. It doesn't any longer. It's a slot on its own. But if you want to take a Lord of War, like a tank or Fellblade or whatever, and a Primarch, you're gonna have to pay 4,000 points to be able to do that. And I think one of the things that we've certainly seen is in our previous games when me and John have gone to events is that we've seen no Lord of War tanks on the field, which I think is interesting, and perhaps a discussion for another time. But we did see a number of Primarchs as well. So people clearly are favouring the Primarch over the Lord of the War, which they previously had done.
They've just made, we will definitely come to this, but they've made Lords of War just so bad.
Yeah, so perhaps it's an episode in and of itself, but I think it's an interesting one to know. Anyway, let's have a look at the Primarch rules. So their base rules, so they've got independent character, obviously, so they can join units. Eternal Warrior, fearless, it will not die 5 up, bulky 4, although there's some fatties out there who are bulky 6, which I suspect is a bit of a rules error. So I know that Fulgrim, slimmest, leanest of Primarchs, is actually bulky 6, isn't he?
Yeah, but don't forget he has a snake body.
He's got a snake form, right? Yeah, and I think there's another fatty out there, isn't there? Is it Perturabo?
No, not Perturabo.
Not okay. There's another one out there, maybe Ferrus Manus, who's also bulky 6. Maybe Lee can have a look in the rules for us.
Yeah, I don't know.
They come with relentless, so they can shoot and they can charge. And in addition, the models with the Primarch unit type always count as a character model.
I always forget the It Will Not Die, by the way. Every single model in my universe has It Will Not Die.
Yeah.
I always forget about.
But this is the thing that, as Lee was saying, what happened previously is that they met in turn 2, and then the fight continues turn 5, because often you got a couple of wounds back from the It Will Not Die. Just made the game last a bit longer. So Primarchs are not affected by special rules that negatively modify their characteristics other than wounds. And in addition, Primarchs always resolve snapshots of their normal risk. So that's really interesting, because that suggests to me that they can't be affected by rad grenades then.
No, they can't be affected by rad
grenades. Their
toughness
can't be reduced. Okay, that's really, really interesting. Okay. That's really interesting, actually, because just something to bear in mind when your destroyers get thrown in and you're like, oh, your Primarch is toughness 5 now or whatever. But in fact, that's not the case. So any hits inflicted by a Primarch as part of either shooting, attacks, or in close combat are allocated by the Primarch's controlling player and not the controlling player of the target unit. These hits should form a separate wound pool. So essentially, all shots have precision, don't they? Essentially, that's what it means. That could be really useful if your Primarch isn't tied up in a challenge. So I think that we will come to challenges and the problems with challenges with Primarchs later. But if you are kind of accepting a challenge with a in a command squad with just a mook, bear that in mind, because you might want to go, right, that apothecary dead, that sergeant's dead, that guy with a Vexil is now dead, and doing that first. So that's really, really important to remember. And if an army includes any Primarch models, then one of these models must be chosen. Then that model must be chosen as the army's warlord, of course. The other thing that it doesn't say in there is that Primarchs also come with their Legiones Astartes rules, which they didn't previously. And that, as we've seen with Leman Russ already, provides some really nice buffs along with it. So for Perturabo, I suppose it would be +1 against vehicles and automata with shooting weapons. So maybe not as useful.
No.
But for things like Leman Russ with his +1 weapon skill, that is hella useful. That is so good when you think about the kind of situations that Primarchs get themselves into. So a really good set of rules, good to go over them, because there are some things that I've forgotten, particularly around precision shots and precision strikes there as well. Anybody want to say anything before we move on?
No, just always remember It Will Not Die.
Cool, awesome. Let's move on to the next one, please, then, Lee. So we talked about Primarchs in 2nd edition, so let's have a look at the next one. So the first choice, after deciding whether or not you want to take a Primarch in your army, is how to transport your Primarch. So as Lee said, there are some Primarchs that you typically would kind of run on foot because they've got a set of great big wings attached to their body, or they've got a jump pack, or they can move very, very fast, very quickly, like Conrad Kurz does, so they don't require a transport. But the majority of your Primarchs are probably going to be in some sort of transport to be able to get them there. Now, that has always been, in my opinion, you guys might disagree with me on this one, that always tends to be because you are attaching them to a unit which usually has a pretty good invulnerable save. That unit tends to be Cataphractii Terminators, and that unit is very, very slow and can't run up the board. So the temptation is to put them in a Spartan with a Terminator squad, and you saw that so much in first edition. You had a Primarch boy band Spartan, and it just became a Death Star that was very, very difficult to deal with, especially because it was flare shielded. But we are going to go through a couple of options that you might not have thought of previously with our transports. Does anybody want to say anything before we have a look at a couple of options?
Nah, it was just kind of ubiquitous, wasn't it? You'd be like, you just go like, you just ask your opponent, or you'd naturally assume, okay, like what's in the bang bus? Because my bang bus is going to face off against your bang bus. I'm guessing yours has got your elite Terminators with your Primarch and a Primus Medicae, and mine has got my elite Terminator, the Primus Medicae, and my Primarch in it, and they just drive at each other.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, which is the point I suppose we were making previously. But let's have a look at a few that maybe we haven't had a look at previously. So, of course, we have the Storm Eagle. So not yet in plastic, but I'm sure it's going to be arriving in plastic soon. So the Storm Eagle is an interesting choice. It's obviously got to come in from reserves, but that means that you are reliant on a reserves kind of role to be able to get it in. You didn't see many Primarchs in a Storm Eagle, if any, because of the fact you were reliant on reserves and you really wanted to get them into close combat. The other thing is, of course, being bulky 4, they take up 4 slots as well. So an interesting choice. And if you can manipulate reserves, maybe a realistic choice to take. But it's just the fact that it's got to come on. You've got to wait a turn before you can use. You can get out an assault out of it if you're just using regular reserves as well. Not the best choice, I think, but an interesting choice nonetheless.
The problem is as well, like with everything that's not got wheels or tracks in this edition, it can be intercepted and just immediately blown out of the sky as soon as it arrives. That's always the problem.
Yeah, cool. Let's have a look at the next one, Lee. So this is an interesting one. This was a really great choice in 1.0 because it had the assault vehicle special rule, and now it does not. You cannot assault out of this vehicle. It's basically like carrying your dudes around in a 100-point Rhino, basically. But it can take a Primarch for its, filling up 4 slots. So you could have him and then plus 8 other guys, I guess, within it. Command squad or just a squad of veterans, whatever. So I think that you can do it. You can put him in here, but I think you are really going to struggle with the assaults. And the fact it's not an assault vehicle makes it really dangerous because you're standing with a dick in your hand.
We need to. I'm starting this now. I want to see people hashtagging all of their posts with "Make Dreadclaws great again," please.
Yeah,
because we just need it. Like they are. I don't think they'd be overpowered. I think they've really ruined the fact that the Dreadclaw is no longer an assault vehicle has ruined a lot of really fun builds and fun ways of playing an army. I think I just can't understand why. I can't understand why. You can still, it's going to turn up in reserves, right? It's a flyer, so you can still shoot it.
Yeah,
but you can still intercept it. Like it can still scatter off.
Yeah,
it's just crap.
Yeah, I suspect it's because you basically would have stayed in. It would have the vehicle would have got intercepted. And then the guys would have just been like, okay, well, now you've blown up my vehicle. I'm now going to assault you. And I've been protected by the fact that I'm in a vehicle. And I think that's probably the
but the exploding vehicle is still causing automatic strength 8 hits. So there is still jeopardy involved. The problem with it now is obviously it's going to come down. You can't assault in the turn it comes down.
Yeah.
You've then got to get out. You can't assault in that turn. And
so
then
turn 3 assault, right?
Yeah. Or is it turn 2 because you obviously get out when you But even so, the jeopardy is the fact that exploding vehicles now is harsh as fuck.
It basically is not a decent choice for your Primarch and band, sadly, but it was a great choice previously.
However, the Charybdis, I naturally assume that's going to be the next slide. I don't know why.
So the Land Raider. So this is a great choice. It is not quite as hardy as the Spartan because it can't get a flare shield. I think it's 1 less hold point, although somebody might need to check that for me. And it doesn't have quite the same power in terms of the twin linked las cannons, but it is still a fantastic choice. I will be taking one with Gilliman and 8 Suzerain in a Land Raider.
Oh God, that guy.
I am that guy, yeah.
What an absolute swat.
And I've played against you, John. I need something to be able to take on that firepower. But I think it's a great choice, and an even greater choice because it's about 100 points cheaper than a Spartan, and it's also in plastic as well. So I think this is
the Spartan. You can pick up a Spartan for 40 quid on eBay.
Yeah, no doubt. But I think that sometimes just the moment you start upgrading the Spartan, I think it becomes a little bit prohibitively expensive, especially when you get a Primarch, because you're paying basically 400 points for a Spartan, whereas this is around the 250 mark, I think, and I think that's a very respectable kind of cost for a transport.
I think if you're going to run a Primarch in a Land Raider, you need multiple threats in your army.
Correct.
Your opponent is just going to blow this Land Raider up turn 1, and your Primarch's just going
to. And then you're walking,
yeah. So I think it is a good option. It's not as hardy as the Spartan, so you need something to kind of, get your opponent thinking, not just I have to blow up that Land Raider.
Gilliman and 8 Suzerain in a Land Raider has got a high level of Chad points attached to it, so it's really worth bearing that in mind.
Yeah, but what I haven't also told you is that I've got another Land Raider filled with 5 Formentarius as well. So a couple of threats there.
Why are they? We're talking. Don't worry.
So I think a really good option is the option I would probably choose because I just think the Spartans are just a bit too expensive for what they are,
and also looks cool as fuck.
Yeah.
I still think the fact of the matter is what you're as well again talking about is the fact that you're only going to be able to get a Primarch and a maximum 4-man command squad into this Land Raider, which if you want, but if you're attaching him to an elite Terminator unit, no, you would be able to. No, you wouldn't be able to. If they're bulky 4, you wouldn't be able to attach them to a 5-man elite Terminator unit.
Correct.
Because they won't fit inside. So you are talking about a 3 to 4-man command squad, depending on how bulky your Primarch is.
Yeah. So this is why for the Suzerain, I think it works quite well.
Because, absolutely, agreed.
Because they only take up 1 slot, right? So I think if you're putting your Primarch with veterans, a command squad which is non-Terminator based, or an elite unit that's in power armor or artificer armor, I think this is a great choice. The moment you're thinking about going Terminators. So number 1, your Terminator squad has to be over 5-man to be able to unlock the Spartan choice as a dedicated. You can put it in the heavies if you want, but I think that 5-man Terminator and a Spartan is just fucking ridiculous. I
agree with you. Like if you're taking that big old bus and you need to fill it up with paying customers, or leave it at home. 7
or 8 Terminators is the minimum I would do for I would consider a Spartan.
Yes.
Leads us nicely to this one. So it's got firepower. It's hardy.
Yeah,
especially against the front on the front because of the flare shield.
It's well costed points wise, and it's cheap to buy.
So I think that it's not well costed points. So I still think that 400 points with the flare shield is really expensive for a 2,500 point game or a 3,000.
Yes, it is for that point. I agree with you, but I don't think you're going to run. I think at 3,000 points it's fine, but I also think at 2,500 points you're probably not going to see a Primarch. I think you're taking a Primarch. So I would be inclined to agree. I think this is potentially one where we're just going to have a difference of opinion.
Yeah,
I think opinion's probably going to be split 50-50 as well. So
yeah. Cool, but great choice because it's got a lot of las cannons, and of course, instead of the heavy bolters, you're obviously going to put the las cannons on it as well. I think that one of the things I would say about the Land Raider and the Spartan is, and it's a thing that when I played against Paul, because Paul often took Alfarius and the Linnaeans in a Spartan, is to once you've delivered the guys, it's kind of what to do with the Spartan afterwards as well. And I think that's always an interesting choice because there is some vulnerability you put the Spartan into. Once you drive it up and then get the guys out, you're pointing it often towards the enemy, and then it often means that your opponent can flank you on the sides and then take it out on the sides. And I think that there is a question about, well, are you going to transport it like if they did delete the unit that they've just attacked, are you going to get the back in and then go assault something else, or are you going to use it essentially? Because what happens is it becomes a mobiles weapon platform, doesn't
it becomes a gunboat. But it's the fact of the matter is as well, like it's got the same firepower as like an so it's 8 las cannon shots if you've got the middle one, isn't it? No,
1, 2, 3, 4,
5,
6,
5.
5. Yeah, 5.
Yeah. Oh God, I remember we had this discussion at episode 3 and got fucking wrong there. So, but like, it is a mobile gunboat at that point, but it's still got a decent degree of firepower.
Yeah.
Like it's got a 250 points worth of marine firepower included in it as well. So I think it's got play. I think you can definitely make the argument for or against, depending on what your opinion is. Like quite a justifiable one as well.
Yeah, I agree. Lee, is there anything else you want to say before we move on to the next one?
No, just kind of reiterate what you said. Really, like obviously it's a fairly long model. The flare shield is on the front. As soon as you start pushing that forward, even if your opponent's got an immobile army, they're getting into your flank. So it kind of is a risk. But on the flip side, I personally would still be looking at the Spartan over the Land Raider to transport. If I was putting that many points into a unit, I'd want to give it the best opportunity to get across the table.
I totally agree with you.
But yeah,
cool. All right, let's continue.
Yes.
I'm the
connoisseur's choice.
Yeah, so this is a big old model. If you want to challenge painting something and building something, then this is the one for you. Perhaps, John, I just want to look at something quickly in the rules, but perhaps you could talk about it.
Well, I have extensive. Well, not extensive. I have experience of using a Primarch in a Charybdis in 2.0 with my World Eaters and Angrot. And I can tell you that it didn't used to have deep strike up until the errata, and but now I think this is fucking great. This is the absolute apex threat. If you've got a Primarch Death Star and you just want to get it right up into your opponent's grill, the only downside to this model is the fact that it takes a heavy support slot as opposed to being a dedicated transport.
Yeah.
That, in my opinion, that is the only downside. I think if you play an aggressive army and you want an aggressive threat, it's expensive. It's 200 quid. It's an absolute motherfucker to put together.
Yeah.
Especially if you did what like my World Eaters one still has the ability to pivot all of the legs up and down, so it can spider itself up or spring itself down. I personally think this is the apex threat. It's got high transport capacity. You can get all of the guys in there.
Yeah.
It'll deep strike down. It's got especially if you put it with if you've got like a Master Signals or somewhere in there, if you build the army around like podding in, you're going to have all of the abilities to like the ground tracking auguries and the bits to be able to kind of reposition it if it goes off. And you can get out and you can assault out of it. Like turn one, you haven't got to worry about someone flanking you because it's going to be like up in your shit. Yes, obviously it can still be intercepted, but it doesn't really matter about your Primarch. You're going to get your man into combat. I think this is...
It is a bit of a bargain. So just to... I
think this is the winner.
I missed where you said that. So it's 12 all round. It's movement 16, ballistic skill 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a turret-mounted Death Storm missile launcher. So I'll have a look at the rules for that in a minute. But it also can transport a Dreadnought, but it's 22 capacity as well.
Yeah, but... we didn't say in the book it hasn't got deep strike, whereas from the errata it now has, and that's what makes it
top notch.
King shit. I think this is like genuinely. I am seriously considering one of these for the Iron Warriors, although it's not as cool as an option that we'll talk about later, which is much cooler.
And also on top of that, the Death Storm missile launcher is 18 inches, strength 6, AP 4, nothing to be sniffed at. That's pretty good. It's heavy 9,
and it fires at every unit within that radius as well because of its special rules. So it's not just you can basically drop it in the middle and it pins people. It fires at everyone around it. You dudes get out and they can fucking attack. Oh, it's wicked.
Yeah. That is clearly John's choice. An interesting choice. It's just a pig of a model. Hopefully, it's in plastic, and then that will solve everything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the main thing stopping people using this more is the fact that it's the size of a basketball and it weighs about 20 kilos.
Yeah.
So imposing on the table though. It's so imposing. Oh, fucking royally good.
Cool.
Love it.
All right. So there you go. So Spartan Land Raider or a
Charybdis.
could be your option. But of course, because you can now take a Lord of War and Primarch in the same list, if you want to go hard, then you can also take a Thunderhawk, or of course you can take a Stormbird as well. So if you are playing massive games, then of course you are obviously going to want to take a Stormbird with your Primarch in, because that's the way that they always travel, isn't it? I mean, like, you know, apart from Rogel Dawn and his golden Thunderhawk, really they all travel via Stormbird. So it would be really interesting in narrative massive games that you play over a day with a friend for you guys to take.
I think if you realistically want to run these, you need to be running on a 12-foot table, really. You know, otherwise it just takes up the whole fucking table. You need 2 6x4s put together.
What's the transport capacity of the Stormbird? Is it 40? Or 44.
I will have a look while you just discuss it. But I think the thing about this is that, and exactly as Lee said, because of its size, I think that they're not particularly realistic to play on a 6x4. But they
Stormbird's 52.
Oh, what? Yes.
Yeah, the Thunderhawk is 32. And the Stormbird is 52.
And it can take a Rhino. It can take Rhino chassis vehicles. Each one takes up. Is it 10 or 20?
Correct. Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool. But again,
what you can also get
games. It's certainly not an optimized choice, is it?
No, but it's cool. No. I just think you need to think about what you're playing on, because
100%.
Literally take up the whole fucking table.
Awesome.
Yes, here we go.
Yes. Right. So this is a really interesting choice. So it is, this bad boy comes in base 700 points. It's got a transport capacity of 42. And I think that for games that are around, so you probably can squeeze it in 5,000 points. You're looking at a 5,000 point game. You could take your Mastodon with a Primarch with a big boy band inside it, and I think that would be really cool. But again, you are looking at a 5,000 point game in order to be able to run this. I think John had a wild idea with Perturabo, didn't you? What was your
however, I think I wrote a list that had a Mastodon that was full of Iron Circle, but it's not quite as good as I thought, because I factored in at the time it was running with my Warsmith with Iron Circle, which is only bulky 2.
Right.
So the Iron Circle can go in the Mastodon, but they take up 10 spaces each. So you can only get 3 and Perturabo, which is boring.
The 4 would make it perfect.
4 and Perturabo, it's symmetry, isn't it? So because obviously, ideally, I was just wondering about the Stormbird. If you could take all 6 and Perturabo in there, but you can't.
No, you can't. Not even. No.
Never mind. But I think as well, the biggest change to the Mastodon is the fact that it used to be when it went bang, everyone inside was fucked, mega fucked, hyper fucked. Whereas at least now, when it does get blown up, and it's a hardy, it's a tough old beast. Like it really is a tough boy to get rid of. Everyone's going to be fine. But the beauty of it is the fact that because of its transport bay ruling, you can obviously you can mix and match what goes in there.
Yeah.
So you can have multiple units inside. So you can do some really cool stuff about having your Primarch and his boy band, and then like some supporting squads to like lay down some covering fire, or a couple of dreadnoughts just to provide a little bit of additional punch. Yeah. So I think this opens up some really fun. The Thunderhawk, and also like this is a third of the price of a Stormbird.
Yeah.
In terms of like physical purchase price. And it's fucking cool. Look at it. Yeah.
I think again though, this comes back to, if they ever made this in plastic, I'd snap one up straight away, but I just can't. I know it's not as big as the Charybdis and that, but I just can't be fucking bothered trying to build this in resin. Like I just can't be asked. Like that is the one thing that stops me. This in plastic, or I'd fucking gobble them all up.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really fair point. But again, you are limited on the points that you play on this one, I think. So something to kind of bear in mind for this. Right. So the next option is you can run them on foot. So get your trainers on, and your Primarch can run. Now we've talked I think this is a viable option, but it's not viable if you put your unit with, for example, a squad of Cataphractii Terminators. I think then it's no longer a viable choice because they'll just be so slow and they won't be able to do what you need them to do. If your Primarch, though, is somebody who has a great big, enormous pair of wings or has a jump pack, then I think that you're going to want to put them with a similarly armed Warhawk kind of squad. And then I think that you can just hop around it and you can avoid the cost of a Spartan and spend those points somewhere else. So there is definitely some Primarchs that lend themselves towards going one way and other Primarchs that lend themselves towards going the other way. The other interesting thing that I looked at is that Sanguinius, of all people, can actually go into a Spartan and can start in a Spartan. There's because he hasn't got a jump pack on. He's not stopped by going into a Spartan. But one of the issues around Primarchs is around getting back into a Primarch. So rules have written currently they can start in it, but they're not actually allowed to get back in it. So whether that needs a FAQ or an errata or something, something needs to happen.
I think as well that the problem with running them or being on foot, especially when you are talking about things like Cataphractii, is it's not necessarily the vulnerability of the Primarch themselves, it's the vulnerability of their boy band.
Yeah.
Because what you need is your boy band to take on your opponent's boy band, where your Primarch takes on your opponent's boy band.
Yeah.
And you can't really use the kind of retinue as ablative wounds like you can in other scenarios. You do need them to get there, and I think there are either you run them singularly like a Comrade Kurz, for instance, or a Corax, who you are probably going to see on their own because they are just devastating threats singularly. Or again, the other example is probably Pertarabe because he's just with the ultra survivable like Metal Men unit. So I think that you kind of do need to think long and hard about whether the value of transports for more expensive units, I think, is vastly improved.
Yeah, and something we haven't also discussed within this is that some Primarchs do natively come with Deep Strike as well, and that unlocks Deep Strike on some other units. So Horus is a good example. If Horus is attached as a retinue to just there, and he allows them to Deep Strike.
Rogue Dawn as well.
Exactly, with her skulls, which also comes with Deep Strike, I think. But also you can buy Deep Strike for squads of Terminators with them as well. So there is Deep Strike, but I think the big problem that you've got with Deep Strike is the same thing that you've got with anything deep striking, which is that you've got to weather the interceptor or Deep Strike behind cover away from other people. So I think that if you're going to Deep Strike a Primarch with a Terminator unit or a unit, you need other units backing them up or working in parallel in order to be able to do that ballsy maneuver, I think.
Just buy him a Charybdis.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just do that.
Because only the Charybdis can be intercepted. So obviously, once it's destroyed, your guys can still assault, and they're going to be immune to many other intercepts.
Exactly. So that might be the other option. But yeah, as Lee said, it is a pig, but it's probably one of the better options to take. But man, the moment it comes out in Primarch, I think that will sell like hot.
Do you mean plastic?
Ooh, sorry, plastic. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no.
I think one thing that we haven't mentioned that does help Primarchs on foot is the distinct lack of strength 10 AP2 in the game now.
Yeah.
Previously, if you tried running anything on foot that was tasty, then they'd be dead.
Launcher cannon would just fucking ruin.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Mechanicum, you're going to probably struggle, and it'll be interesting to see the rules around Solar Auxilia, whether they've got anything funky, a Solar Auxilia cannon, which is strength of 12 AP2 or something. I don't know. Something
you're starting to see, especially in our meta, the proclivity of Predators with conversion beamers sat in the back corner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, good point. Cool. Let's have a look at the next one.
I think that's it, huh?
Are we into the boys?
Yes. We're looking at the boy bands now. So we've talked in detail about the Death Star, but we're going to talk about some obvious options. Now, of course, what you are going to want to do them is put with either your first company or your Primarch with your kind of most elite Legion specific unit, because they're often the close combat monsters and close combat beasts. So we've just got a couple that we'll go through. We won't go through every single one, but there are some obvious ones to put them with.
Here we go.
So, of course, Lionel Johnson with a squad of Zenobian Knights. So the Zenobian Knights are absolute fucking murderers, along with Lionel Johnson, who is an absolute fucking murderer. And again, this is just the archetype cataphracti elite unit that you want to put them with, and they can support each other, and they can absolutely mash anything in close combat. And again, Spartan or Charybdis, you're going to put them in this situation, and this is just a bog standard classic one that you would see for most Dark Angels players if they're taking a Primarch, right?
This is the most terrifying of all the options I think we're going to look at. Like, if I saw this across the table for me, I'd just be thinking, oh.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to shoot that in 2 times.
Oh, that's a shame. He's wasted so much time building, painting, earning the money to buy these. Yeah, no, this is like you can't let this Death Star get anywhere near you because you're fucked.
Yeah, it's beastly. Right, let's have a look at the next one. We'll whiz through these because
it looks so cool though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks awesome, but it's gonna ruin your day, right? So this one's a really interesting one, which is that as we said before, Rogel Dawn has Deep Strike. He can give Terminators can buy Deep Strike, but I think Hurskars actually come with it. So this is a real option to Deep Strike down with 10 Terminators and Rogel Dawn, and I think you can probably avoid the Spartan and just take them because they come with shields which are 3 up in Bun. They've all got 2 wounds a piece, so they will survive most things that are being thrown at them, even in the Interceptor. So a real viable option, this one, and a little bit different because it's coming down by a Deep Strike. So look at the next one. So I've talked about this one as well. So they can take a Land Raider as a dedicated transport, the Suzerain, but bear in mind you can only take 8 plus Guilliman. But I would definitely suggest taking them as a retinue because you can take a banner. It doesn't add much to the unit because the unit itself comes with quite a lot of buffs that you'd already want a command squad to come with. But a good choice nonetheless.
Well, it gives that aura, doesn't it? Having the banner gives that.
It's the aura that you're paying.
Aura that you're gonna, precisely. But this is probably the exception to the sticking with the Terminators rule as well. But why would you not? I mean, like they're as survivable as Terminators. Well, are they 2 wounds?
2 wounds a piece, 2 up, 4 up. Yeah.
So
and then initiative AP2. So a really good option. But I think that a Land Raider will probably be the best choice for these guys.
Strongly.
Next one. So this is a really survivable unit. They remain some of the best Terminators in the game just by virtue of the fact they've got really cheap fucking Thunderhammers, 5 points to Thunderhammer. They come with a 3 up, or you can buy the 3 up in Bun Safe for them, which is dirt cheap as well. And then Vulcan, who's their daddy, is going to be going around mulching things in a Spartan as well. So again, he can be taken, or they can be taken for Vulcan in a command squad. You don't get the banner for this particular unit. But they can be taken as a command squad. I think that again, it's a Spartan for these guys or a Charybdis, but they are a very harder unit, and I think because by virtue of the fact they've all got Thunderhammers, and the fact that they've got Brutal 2 on those Thunderhammers, fucking hell, they're just they will end you.
This is the situation where this is the ultimate boy band murdering boy band squad.
Yes,
this is going to fuck up your boy band harder than your boy band's going to fuck up them.
Yeah, and by virtue of the cheap Thunderhammers, right? Because you're just going to take
the shields
and the 3 up,
and the 3 up and vulnerable. Brutal 2 hammers, 3 up and vulnerable, and then Vulcan himself is no joke, as we'll come to in a minute. So I think this is an absolute sleeper nightmare unit.
Yeah, I think this is brutal.
Yeah,
cool. Right, let's have a look at the next one.
They look cool as fuck.
Yeah, they look awesome. Yeah, they've stood the test of time. So the Pretty Boys, again, you got it's a classic combination. Your Phoenix Guard, and then Fulgrim. And I think this is more of a narrative kind of piece, really, which is that actually in every single one of the fluff, the Phoenix Guard are always walking around, preening Fulgrim's hair, making sure his armor's nice and polished. I don't think they always come in Terminator armor in the books, but these models do come with Terminator armor.
No, they don't. They're not always. Yeah, I mean, the clues in the name that they are the guard of the Phoenician. They are like his. They're not the first company like a Justarian is in a Sons of Horus army. These are the personal bodyguard of the Primarch.
Yeah.
So Look
Like a
at
nice
them.
unit.
I think they
nonetheless.
look. These have got to be one of my favorite Terminator units.
Yeah.
They look so fucking good.
And they're in Tartarus as well, which is again often overlooked, especially when we
Yeah.
talk about maneuverability and speed.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
So,
Let's have a look at the next one.
and just one thing with these is they do have a little buff of Phoenix Terminators get +1 combat res, and Fulgrim gives +1 combat res, and they stack. So you've got +2 combat res when you run these two together.
Yeah, so you could draw a combat and then win by 2.
Yeah,
they're a proper glass cannon, which is exactly how Empress Children should be, in my opinion.
yeah,
as well,
so. yeah. And they look fucking awesome.
Oh, yes.
Cool.
Good.
Period.
We talked about this one already, but of course you're going to want to run Perturabo with some Iron Circle, because Perturabo, I believe John gives the Iron Circle a number of buffs, doesn't he, if he's attached to them?
He does. He
Yeah,
gives them Feel No Pain, which is
5+.
absolutely unreal.
On a toughness 7 model, is it? Toughness 7?
Yep.
Woo!
Yeah.
Oh, Lordy.
They don't have, actually that's not true. They can have decent output if you roll well, and the fact they're only weapon skill 4 is also the thing that lets them down. But they are unkillable. Like, I've run these guys a few times now, and I've only lost 1.
Which is a far cry from what it used to be. Because
they used to be pretty dump, whereas now they're pretty. And they've got brutal haywire hammers now as well. So, and native 3 attacks. 3 attacks each. So I think they're really good, and they're super iconic as well.
I think they're some of the best looking units in the game.
And again, you talk about the fluff. You always read about Perturabo with the Iron Circle. They are one and the same. They are always there. They are always watching. They're always stoically doing nothing.
And great use of transfers, I would say, on this model, where they've got half a Mechanicum and then half Iron Warrior's head there. So they've clearly cut up different transfer sheets to be able to do that. I think Mark Bedford painted these, I think, from what I recall. But
what an absolute lad.
Cool. Let's have a look at the next ones. So just like the Phoenicians kind of boy band, this is the ultimate boy band to go along with Mortarion. They always have to stay within 49 steps of him, I think, 7 times 7 or something like that. And a really iconic unit and an excellent looking unit. So it's a classic, isn't it? You want these in a Spartan. I don't think either of these have deep strike. I don't think that is no. But the other, just before I forget, though, is the other way that you can give units deep strike, of course, is a warmonger, which we haven't discussed at all. So if you are considering actually, look, a Spartan's too expensive, I can't be asked with a Charybdis and spending 200 points on it. I just want them deep striking down, getting in someone's face. Consider a warmonger, because it's 100 and something points, and that will get your whole unit deep striking down if it doesn't have it. So something to consider.
We're saying as well with the Death Shroud, you have to run them as 7 or you are a problem child.
Yes,
I would say that I believe, off the top of my head, the Death Shroud are one of the most expensive fucking Terminator units in the game.
Are they?
I think they're about 75 points per dude.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. I won't be able to find it now.
It's under D for Death Shroud.
So 140 points for 2. And then up to 8 additional Death Shroud Terminators at 70 points per model.
Fuck.
What? Why?
If you take these as a retinue,
that's why you're watching.
They can take a Legion Standard.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, great.
What do they come with? Yeah, what do they come with, out of curiosity?
So they got Alchem Pistol, whatever that does, Power Scythe, Tartarus Terminator Armor, Relentless, the Death Shroud Retinue, Bulky 2, Battle Hardened 1, Stubborn.
Oh, okay. It's the Battle Hardened that you're paying for there.
Yeah, and these are 3 wounds, so their movement 7.
Oh, 3 wounds.
Ballistic skill 5, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds 3, initiative 4, attacks 3. Leadership 9 2+.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah,
so if you are unfamiliar with the Battle Hardened rule, essentially what it does is that for instant death kind of wounds, it bumps up your toughness for dealing with instant death wounds. So basically they're toughness 5. So they can't be instant killed by a power fist, for example. They can't be instant killed by a las cannon, for example. So basically you're running around with a squad of Abaddons essentially there, because the Battle Hardened is just is fucking nuts. Like, that is so good.
And let's face it, if you're running these as a boyfriend for your Primarch, they're probably going to be coming up against Power Fist of some sort.
Yeah, and they're just going to laugh because and if they're losing wounds, they'll lose one wound. Like, they're fucking laughing, these guys. So yeah, so they've got but they've got a 5-up invuln, have they?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Slightly mitigated by that, but
just iconic as fuck, isn't it? This is just Mortarion and his fucking bodyguards.
Cool, awesome. Right, let's have a look at the next one then. But definitely a warmonger, I would say, is a definite option if you are thinking about deep striking. So absolute classic. Giles fucked me in the arse with this one when I played him last. When Horus is attached to Justarian unit, he gives them deep strike as a retinue, and they can also take a banner, I think, for 15 points. They are an absolutely fucking savage unit alongside the Sons of Horus rule, because the strength of weapons is at -1 against them. So a really brutal unit. You're probably going to see this one deep striking down rather than taking a Spartan, but it is fucking savage.
Cool.
So, Lee, you will probably want to talk about this one because this, I think, is quite unique in the fact that it says specifically in Lorgar's kind of rules about command squad. So, do you want to talk us through this one?
So, I mean, essentially, Lorgar, if he's run with any command squad, and I've put this picture up, but it's standard command squad, Tartarus or Cataphracti, he gives them the Fearless and Feel No Pain 4+. I'm not sure why, but
spicy.
He gives a command squad that he's with Fearless and 4+ Feel No Pain. So obviously, if he dies, they remain fearless.
The problem with the Feel No Pain though is most of the time you're going to come up against things that are going to double them out anyway. I think.
Yeah, that is definitely true, but it's but it's better than attaching a Primus Medicae to them.
So,
you're saving 100%.
This is also where we get into things like rights of war and other things that you want to think about when you're building your lists. So obviously, one of the word bearers' rights of war, if you pick a unit and kill it, you can give a unit +1 strength, +1 toughness, +1 weapon skill.
Right, okay.
So if you do that, if you pick someone's fucking rhino or something, kill it, and then you go, right, Lorgar's command squad now has weapon skill 6, toughness, strength 5, toughness 5, like with a 4+ Feel No Pain. Suddenly,
Jesus.
They're getting pretty fucking tasty.
So it's like a sacrificial thing. It's like you choose one at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, it's one of their rights. It's the right of war that word bearer players are going to take, basically. But yeah, you pick exactly that, a sacrificial unit from the enemy's army. As soon as you've killed that unit, you can give one of your units +1 weapon skill, +1 strength, +1 toughness.
Why, that's awesome.
Do that to a command.
So me and Lee talked about this yesterday, actually. So I think a viable option for this is to take them in power armor, give them come in artificer armor. They have breacher shields, and then they've got the 4-up Feel No Pain, and then you can bang them in a Land Raider, and then you can combine that with whatever rights of war that you want to, or corrupted, or whatever the fuck you want to. And I think you've got a really hardy unit, which could really upset someone's day. I don't think they're as hardy as Fire Drakes and Vulcan, but I think it's cool as fuck, and I think that the 4-up Feel No Pain is just so good. I think that's absolutely awesome.
It's an interesting one. I don't really know what the fluff is behind that. I don't.
No, I'm not sure either.
I guess it's because they're just so devout, fucking fanatical followers or something. I haven't.
Yeah, I think so. I think they lack kind of an uncorrupted, like, elite Terminator unit, really, don't they? I mean, they've got the Gavel back, but they don't have a typical kind of unit that might be assigned to the.
If we get like a demon Terminator unit, can you imagine?
Yeah, it'd be fucking nuts. That'd be cool. Right, let's have a look at the next one. Some interesting.
That's it.
Cool. So, one of the things that we also want to talk about with Primarchs is around challenges. So, it's come up in a couple of games, but also a couple of conversations with people, which is that one of the dangers around soloing your Primarch is that they can be tied up in challenges due to the challenge rules and what happens with challenges. So if you're unfamiliar with it or you've not come across it yet, what happens with challenges is that you go and you issue a challenge, declare your challenge or whatever you want to do. You get into your challenge, you fight. Now, if my Primarch with his six wounds immediately kills a sergeant that he's in a challenge with, the 5 wounds left over do not spill over into that combat. Now, they are important for combat resolution, so it does mean that they could potentially wipe the unit out as long as, and kill them outright. But the problem that you've got is that you can be in a situation where you're tied up with puny mooks in challenges, and there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. So it is worth thinking about things like command squads or units that have got the Chosen Warrior special rule, because it allows you to unlock the challenges with those particular models, and then your Primarch is then able to fight and then kind of be as destructive as possible. The other thing why I think it's important with the challenges and the setup as is that if you're attached to a Cataphractii squad, you might win the combat, but you're not going to be able to run them down or chase them down or slay them straight away. They're going to run away from you. And so kind of like whether you have those overspilling wounds, that it doesn't really matter because you're not going to be able to catch them. So I think it's important that you are aware that there will be people in this game who will not accept or where they will accept challenges with their kind of least powerful character in order to tie you up. So I think that's just something to kind of bear in mind when fighting with Primarchs. Is there anything you guys want to say about that or add to that?
No, not really. Just like you say, like it's a bit of an odd mechanic that could just see your Primarch kind of. So I mean, a prime example is I charge if you've got your Primarch on his own or with a handful of boyfriends, and he charges or I charge a corrupted word bearer's 15-man tack squad into him. I take the challenge on the sergeant. With the corrupted rules, even if they lose, they're just going to take D3 wounds and not going to run away.
Right. Okay.
So you could potentially have your 1,000
top it. Yeah.
Army just unit just sat there fucking around with a tack squad. Which is obviously where the boyfriends come in and who he's running with.
Yeah.
Needs to be chewing through those other units because it's just a bit odd. It's just a bit weird. It's like I feel like the thematics of a Primarch is they should just be cutting down fucking mooks in great swathes, not just absolutely fucking stamping one bloke to pop and then shouting at everyone else. I don't know.
Fair play. John, you're a very tactical player. Is there anything you want to kind of add to this one?
Nah, I'm never like. If you ever catch me declining a Primarch challenge with my Primarch, just come along and smash my models because I think it's just the worst thing. Yeah, no, you should just step up.
You've won it. I mean, if somebody does that against you, you've won the moral victory, and no matter what.
Yeah, I genuinely, I have been witness to that in the recent past, and I have thought less of the perpetrator of that particular scenario. naming no names,
but you know who you are, whoever it
is. You know exactly who you are.
A really interesting one, but something to be mindful of. And I think that where before we've talked about Korax and we've talked about Kurz kind of soloing it, I think it's a little bit more dangerous for them to solo it than it previously has been because of this rule. So something to be mindful.
Agreed.
Cool. Let's have a look at the next thing. I hope this is the Primarch weapons. Right. I think before we go into the Primarch weapons, we should take a break. And then after the break, we shall go through the Primarch weapons and our top 3 Primarchs as well.
Cool.
Right, welcome back. We are going to be going through some of the weapons of the Primarchs, which will then lead us nicely to each of our top 3, and we'll briefly talk about that. We won't spend too much time on this, but I think that there are some things to kind of point out. The fucking range weapons on Primarchs I'm fucking not interested in. It's mainly the close combat weapons that we'll really get a hard on for. So we'll go through some of those. So the Primarch Lionel Johnson, man alive, his swords in 1.0 created a lot of controversy, which was basically the Wolf Blade is just fucking better than the Lion Sword, but the Lion Sword was iconic. And what they've done now, they've really fixed this issue by hitting the Wolf Blade with AP3. But it's got a number of rules such as Shred, Breaching 4 Up, Reaping Blow, but it's also got Fearsome Ruin, which gives you kind of an additional, makes your opponent roll an additional dice when they do the morale check. So it's quite interesting that they've added a number of mechanics into the Wolf Blade, which kind of previously didn't exist. But the Lion Sword is AP1 strength. It must be strength 6 or strength 7, depending on what the lion is. It's got armor bane, flesh bane, instant death, mastercrafted, and it's two-handed as well. So a really, really awesome sword, and I think you would find it difficult to choose which one, but I think people probably choose the Lion Sword just because it comes with the AP1. But regardless, I think that they've sorted out the imbalance between the two weapons to make you kind of think about which one you want to choose. Any thoughts on those, lads?
I mean, that's like having the choice between I've gone to an expensive restaurant that's not cost me any money. I've got 2 delicious meals sat in front of me. Which one do I eat? And like, it's kind of like, yeah.
Tough choice, I think, that you've got there. Cool. Why don't John take us through the White Tiger Dao of Jagatai Khan?
Okay, it's White Tiger Dao. It's Strength User +1. Ideal, which I think he's strength 6. I think it makes it strength 7. It is AP2, which is obviously what we're looking for here. It's a Duelist Edge, which is excellent. It's Furious Charge 2, which is interesting that it applies to the weapon as opposed to the model. It's Murder Strike 5+, and it is Mastercrafted. Furious Charge 2 is really nice.
Really unique. You don't get many things with Furious Charge 2, do you?
Well, no, and also you don't get a lot of stuff that isn't the actual unit type that has Furious Charge attached to it. I think attaching those rules to weapons is really nice.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. The other thing I would say about that with the Furious Charge 2 is that because he comes with hit and run on his bike, I think he might just have hit and run kind of natively. It means that you can really leverage the fact you're getting out of combats and then charging back into combat and leveraging that Furious Charge, I think, which is really, really nice. Cool. Let's go for next one, Lee. Perhaps Lee, you could take us through the 2 weapons of Lehman Russ.
Yeah, so we have the Sword of Bale Knight, which is +1 strength AP2, Murderous Strike 4+, Brutal 2, Fearsome Ruin, Mastercrafted. Fearsome Ruin is a bit like the Lions.
I think it might be the same.
Any unit suffers 1 more casualties.
Same words,
yeah, literally, yeah. So you roll an additional d6, keep the 2 highest. The Axe of Hellwinter, +2 strength AP2, melee sunder, reaping blow 1, Mastercrafted.
Cool. Okay, so we've got really one that's for destroying infantry or multi-wound infantry models, and then we've got one for fucking murdering tanks, haven't we? I mean, let's be honest. That's what it's about on this one. Let's go to the Storm's Teeth for Rogal Dawn. So it's +2 strength, which is pretty fucking good. AP2. It's melee 2-handed, Murderous Strike 6 up, Shred, Reaping Blow 2. So really interesting about the Murderous Strike 6 up. Not quite as good as Jagatai's 5 up, and nor is it as good as the Lion Blade's instant death. But because it's got the Shred, you can kind of try and hunt more for those, I think.
It's not even that, I think, as well. It's because it's strength +2, so it's strength 8 AP2, and it's got Reaping Blow 2. He's not very good against other Primarchs, but he will absolutely cull the Primarch Death Star, the boyfriend, the boy band, the bang bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's
what does Reaping Blow 2 do?
Reaping Blow is you get additional attacks if you've got more people. Like if you are outnumbered in base space contact.
Oh, right. Okay. Interesting. Interesting.
So you'll get additional attacks against multiple threats, basically.
Interesting. So strength 8, AP2, basically.
Yeah. So he's doubling people out and he's getting additional attacks. If in a one-on-one fight, he's not as good.
He would really struggle though against the Death Shroud because they're battle hardened or whatever it is, and I think he would also struggle against multi-wound Sons of Horus models on the initial first round.
Yeah,
because
they make him strength 7.
Yeah, that's interesting. So some things would be awesome at, some things not so much. So yeah, got to be careful about where you use him.
But when we get round to eventually looking at the Primarchs individually, he is a bit more of a force multiplier.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. Way better than he was in first edition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Right, let's have a look at the next one. So why don't you, John, take us through the 2 weapons of...
No, you do that. I want to talk about Forge Breaker.
Okay, all right. Lee, why don't you take us through the Spear of Telesto and... or the 3 weapons, actually, of...
So he's got the Spear of Telesto, Strength 10 AP1, melee 2-handed Mastercrafted Lance, Exoshock 4+, and the Moonsilver Blade, which is Strength User AP2, melee Mastercrafted Blind, Duelist Edge 1, and Moonsilver. And Moonsilver is essentially if you're fighting demons or psychers, any unsaved wound caused against a model of the demon unit type or psycho subtype is instead counted as 2 wounds. Yeah, so any wounds count as 2 wounds. Wounds caused in excess of the model's remaining wounds do not spill over to other models. So this goes back to what we're talking about. So basically, if you murder one model, the wounds don't spill over to a model. Yeah. Which makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I mean, it's fluffy, isn't it? Links in with his fucking hating demons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then once per battle in the shooting phase, you can use the Spear of Telesto as a shooting attack, which is range 12-inch, strength 10, AP1, assault 1, exoshock 4, instant death lance.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Fucking hell.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I think it'd be interesting to use that
again. Strength 10 AP1 lance is just
that's
unfair.
But also there's the Blade and Carmine as well, Lee. It's also got the sword.
Oh shit, yeah, I didn't see that. Sorry, and I made this. Blade and Carmine, strength +1, AP2, melee, rage 2, rampage 2, murderous strike 5+, shred mastercrafted.
Do any more rules?
Yeah, that's a fucking ton of rules. So he has to choose the weapon. He has to choose a weapon before the battle.
Right. Okay.
He doesn't come with both weapons at the same time. My choice is always to have more attacks. I think I would probably go for the Blade and Carmine over the Spear, but the Spear hits like a fucking hammer, and I'd be really tempted by the Spear if I was fighting lots of toughness 5 demons or things like that, and then combined with the Moonsilver Blade, I think would be pretty nasty. Cool. Let's go with Ferrus Manus from you then, John.
Oh my god. It's just so good. It's just so. It's classic Iron Hands, and obviously as we later discuss, Iron Warriors. It's just classically simple. It's a big fucking hammer. Yeah. It's not got loads of rules. It's just all the stats are pretty much baked in. Yeah. It's his strength 12. What's not to like? Eh? Strength 12.
That must be the high. That there must be no strength higher for a Primarch. Strength 12 must be the highest.
Nope, correct. Yeah. Everything else there's nothing that's like strength times 2. It's all strength plus or strength as user. This is strength, naturalized strength 12, AP1. It's got all the things we're looking for. It's mastercrafted, exoshock 3+, brutal 3, and spoiler alert, Ferrus strikes at initiative with it.
This is fucking nuts because you see the strength 12 AP1 and then the extra shock and you're like, man, this must be a vehicle killing fucking weapon. And then you see the brutal 3, and you're like,
What?
my life? Like, it does everything. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Like, nothing can stand
It's
against.
not even like, so if you look at the Spear of Telesto, it's two-handed, and this just isn't. He's just swinging this motherfucker around one-handed,
Yeah.
clubbing everyone and anything.
Whilst the servo arm's reaching over the top and just like,
Jeez.
Fucking
I can out your eyes. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
Oh man,
It's it is literally brutal.
Brutal.
Cool. Right, let's have a look at the next lot, please. So,
boring.
Is it back to me? Well, yeah, it's back to me, isn't it? So, we've got Rabute Gilliman. So he's got 2 weapons he can choose from. But Lee has put in this rule, which I think is quite important, which is that when fighting in a challenge, he may re-roll failed to hit rolls of 1 on second and all subsequent rounds of a challenge. So he's got the Gladius Incandar, which is +1 strength, AP2. It's melee, shred, murder strike, 5-up, mastercrafted, and specialist weapon. But he's, of course, got another specialist weapon, which is his giant fist. So he does get +1 attack for all these. And then the Hand of Dominion, which is strength 10, AP1, melee, unwieldy, brutal 2, mastercrafted, and specialist weapon as well. So as weapons go, the Hand of Dominion, I think, is fantastic because it's got the brutal 2. But if he's just munching through dudes, then it's probably worth just using the sword. Regardless, both those weapons are actually pretty good. Considering, I think when you compare it to Jagatai's Tiger Dao sword, I just don't think it really compares, to be honest. I think that those are just absolutely fantastic. John takes through Dawnbringer.
It's another club. So as we're working here, I quite like the clubs. The simplicity of the classic club. It's strength 10, not as good as Forgebreaker. AP1, the same. It's two-handed, so he's not getting an additional attacks, but whatever, doesn't he need
It's
any?
interesting that in his fucking model, he's just swinging it about one hand.
I know, correct, exactly that. Whilst he's like pushing someone away, holding the back. Yeah. He's holding someone at like arm's length. Clubbing
them with one hand. Yeah.
Anyway, well, it's got armor bane.
Maybe frozen up in the air.
It's got instant death. It's mastercrafted. It's just not as good as Forgebreaker.
It's not, but the instant death is really good in certain scenarios and certain situations, I think.
Yeah, it definitely is. But also, I would much rather have the naturalized strength 12 and the brutal 3.
Yes. Yeah, I can understand that. But so again, Dreadnoughts is always a good one to look at, though, right? Because Ferrus Manus, it's brutal 3, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Brutal 3 and
completely ignore what I was about to say. Yeah. Okay, yeah, fine. All right, yeah. No, it doesn't matter. Yeah, his weapon is just better, isn't it?
It's not as good.
Cool. Let's have a look at the next one. So Lee, why don't you do this one for us?
Panoply of the Raven Lord. Strength user, AP2, melee, shred, blind, fighting style.
Blind, that's fantastic.
So fighting style, this is a bit like what he had in the first edition, but I don't think as good. At the beginning of each assault phase, Corvus Corax's controlling player may choose one of the following special rules to apply to his attacks based upon the weapons and fighting style he's employing. Murderous Strike 4+, Rage 4, or Sudden Strike 3. So you basically pick one of them.
Good. They're all pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're good, but
Rage 4 is no joke.
No.
Sudden Strike 3 is... I mean, what? So
because you used to be able to have one where you could hit him. It was a -1 to hit him previously, which was that's what most people chose because you
basically you had hard to hit. You had one that gave him more attacks, and you had one that you used against tanks or vehicles. And I feel like he's kind of lost the one against the tanks.
Yeah,
and I think if he came up against something like a Leviathan, he's just going to be scratching it. I think that's the trouble.
Yeah. Is he winning on 5s? Oh, not with... Oh, yeah, it would be, yeah.
Yeah. Is it 5s? Yeah, it will be, yeah. 5s or 6, yeah.
Cool.
So that's the trouble, I think, with that. But
get Thanator into him. I'll fucking top.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Not with... Although Murderous Strike 4 up, well, it might...
Yeah, it's only doing D3 wins and it's winning on 6s. It's T8. So he's only strength 6 base. So,
interesting.
So he's got shred immediately, so he's on 6s re-rolling, but still. I think he's Thanatar.
I just think he'll struggle against things that are tougher. He'll struggle against.
Okay, that's an interesting one. If you have any thoughts or opinions, or maybe something we're missing on Corvus Corax, then let us know. Let's go to Fulcrum. So, like Sanguinius, he can choose which weapon he goes into battle with. So you've got the Blade of the Lair, the one that corrupted him, which is Strength User AP2, Melee Duelist Edge, and I think he's a whopping Initiative 8 already.
He is Initiative 8, Weapon Skill 8.
So he's got Fleshbane Mastercrafted as well. So a pretty good weapon, and as it says, it is a duelist weapon, that one. And then we've got Fireblade, which was the sword forged from by Ferrus Manus. Strength +1 AP2. It's melee, Murderous Strike 5, Mastercrafted, and Specialist weapon as well. So you're gaining Murderous Strike against going at Initiative 9, basically in close combat, and just wounding on a 2-up, I guess.
Blade of the Lair is just so iconic. Like it's up there with the most iconic weapons in the Heresy, I would have said.
Yeah, and as for Fireblade, he doesn't actually come with an other option for his weapon. Like the model doesn't come with it.
No.
You might consider using Gilliman's the Sword of the Emperor, because it's like on fire, I guess, or something like that. I don't know, but I'm sure Kieran's done a really nice Raptor Imperialis has done a really nice conversion or something, I'm sure, for that one. So you could go check that one out. Difficult to choose which one I'd go for, but I think because he's already Initiative 8, I'd probably go for Fireblade. I
would be inclined to agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go for the next one.
Get him so boring.
Of course, John needs to do this one.
Perturabo. So you're always going to take Forge Breaker Desecrated because you like to troll everyone.
Do you think? How did he desecrate it? Do you think he scratched in Perturabo was?
I think Fulgrim did a little wee on it and then.
Right. I see. Right. Of course. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Popped up his little butt bot and then handed it over. So, funnily enough, it's not as good in the hands.
It really isn't, is it?
So
interesting.
It's unwieldy and it's only brutal too.
Interesting.
But
I mean, it's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, it is still really good. Ferrus Manus is just a top tier Primarch. He is up there as one of the best Primarchs, and Perturabo just isn't. Yeah. It's not kind of what he's about. He shouldn't be really good at. He shouldn't be as good in combat as Ferrus Manus because he's not. Yeah. So, but again, he's a probably better force multiplier when we discuss that.
Yeah,
it's not as good. It's still fucking excellent. The problem you've got is the fact that in Perturabo and the Metal Man Boyfriend Squad everyone is going at Initiative Step 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually I've lied. That's not true. The Iron Circle are going at Initiative Step 3.
Okay. Yeah, and they've got brutal hammers, right, as well.
So. They have, and they also have loads of impact hits. So they're not bad.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think it's probably right that he should probably not be able to wield it in quite the same way as he's only just got it. Yeah, the muscle memory perhaps isn't quite there yet for wielding.
He's just a weak little bitch as
well. Cool. Okay, Lee, take us through kind of Batman here, would you?
Mercy and Forgiveness are 2 separate weapons, and Comrade Curse gains the +1 attack bonus of having 2 weapons when using them. This is not included as part of his profile. So, Mercy and Forgiveness both the same. Strength User, AP2, Melee, Shred, Murderous Strike 4+.
Cool. I quite like perhaps before you fight your challenge, you say, "I'm using mercy. I'm using forgiveness on you," or something like that. I don't know. On particular Primarchs, they might use a particular weapon, but I suspect that they've done 2 weapon entries in order to get around the fact that it's +1 attack and just to make it kind of simpler, so you can add the melee together. But I don't think it needed 2 entries really. But I can
exactly.
I do like it though. It links in really nicely to Nighthawk's backstory, which I think is one of the best Primarch origin stories going. So I think it's a nice touch.
Yeah, it's cool. I think it's good.
And again, I think this links in with what we were saying about Corax is Strength User. You're going to struggle against higher toughness models.
But I think the thing with Comrade is the fact that he's not going to go up against other Primarchs. He is not there to take on another Primarch. He's there to take on everything else.
Causing fear, everything around them as
Yeah,
well. Right?
absolutely. Like he's there to just like be in the lines of like your opponent's army, just murdering a unit a turn. Oh yeah, if you want a different way of playing Primarchs, play Night Lords. I need to buy those fucking cool helmets as well.
Yeah, cool. Right, next one. So we have done a deep dive on this guy and his legion previously. So if you haven't watched that video, then make sure you go back. But he has got the iconic Gore Father and Gore Child. So again, two separate entries, which are exactly the same in order to gain you +1 attack, I assume. So I'll just read Gore Father. It's +1 strength, AP2, melee, specialist weapon, armor bane, murderous strike 3-up, and shred. So not in the realms of brutal, but it is great against tanks, and it is also great against multi-wound models with the fact that it's got murderous strike 3-up as well.
It's got all the rules you could need, and it's shred.
Yeah.
Plus, he has about 10,000 attacks anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Let's have a look at the next one. Lee, why don't you do this one for us?
So Mortarion with Silence, +1 strength, AP2, melee, instant death, sunder, two-handed, reaping blow 2.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I think, fair enough. Can't argue with that, really. I think the reaping blow is pretty good. I think that's just pretty good. And having instant death is fucking amazing. So that's great. Cool. Let's have a look at the next one. Really interesting one. Why don't you take us through this one, please, John?
I don't want to.
The Arn non-Notora.
So this is Magnus's like kind of stupid Force Gladius. It's strength 6, it's AP1, it's got force.
Yeah. So basically that will give your attacks instant death. Is that
instant death? Yeah. Turn it on, gives it instant death. Like he doesn't really necessarily belong in combat, really. Yeah. Well, he can and he kind of can't, because obviously he can buff himself with biomancy and make himself unreal. But interestingly, even if he does that, he's only strength 6.
Right.
Biomancy
doesn't affect strength, though. Oh, the weapon is only strength 6.
The weapon is only strength 6, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So that's really interesting. So basically his buffs, they've decided not to buff the weapon because the buffs come through the psychic powers, basically.
But then the weapon sort of nerfs him back a little bit.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting. If you're a Thousand Suns player and play with Magnus, we'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what he's like in close combat, because I had a look at his psychic powers yesterday. Not as good as he used to be, it seems.
No, but he was too good.
It was nuts, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, but force. Yeah, so if you do a force check before you attack, the strength of your weapon is doubled, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but he can't do that, right? Because it's only strength 6. Oh, the strength of your weapon is doubled.
Yeah. Strength values of any of. So here we go.
Yeah, I thought it gave you instant death. I couldn't remember.
Go on.
Any psycho with a weapon or ability with this special rule may choose to make a psychic check before making any attacks of that weapon or resolving the ability. If the check is successful, then the strength value of any attacks made is doubled. If the check has failed, then Perils of the Warp is resolved, targeting the unit containing the model that failed its checks. If the Psycho survives Perils of the Warps, then it may attack as normal.
Right.
So, it's not instant death. It becomes strength 12.
Apologies, I thought it was instant death. I'm sure it was in 1.0, but it doesn't really matter because
it
becomes strength 12 AP1.
That's fucking nothing to be sniffed at, though, is it?
I don't play librarians though because I'm not a twat. So.
I mean, you don't play librarians.
Excellent. Right. So a very, very interesting weapon. Nonetheless, if you have played with Magnus, and we'd love to know your experience of it, so write in the comments below. And we've got the Lupercal. So he's got Worldbreaker, which is strength 10, AP2. It is melee, mastercrafted, brutal to sunder, and unwieldy. So good against multi-wound models and good against tanks and vehicles and things like that. And then the Talon. Now, the Talon, I think, has got a little bit of... It's gained Deflagrate, which is fantastic, but I really love the Disabling Strike that it had before, which basically kind of nullified the toughness or the strength. I think it was the strength, actually, of each person per round, which was great. But obviously, because you can't impact Primarchs in that way now, that I think they've removed it probably for that reason. And I think that against normal guys, the Deflagrate will just see Horus going through a squad of 20 guys and just fucking murdering them.
As he should.
Yeah.
He should,
So
like,
is
one sweep
melee...
of the talent should take out hordes of dudes. So.
Absolutely. So it is melee, shred, and deflagrate. So you're basically going to be always wounding, and then you're going to be doubling those wounds because they're AP2. So, you know, against normal guys, he's just going to go through them. Absolutely savage. Next up, is there anybody else after this? Oh, right. Go on, Lee. You do this one, and then we'll get John to do Alpha.
Yeah, cool.
So the hero that is Lorgar, I think his pistol's worth mentioning, to be honest. I know you don't want to talk about weapons, but his pistol is Strength 8 AP2, Concussive 2, Graviton Pulse Haywire. That's pretty fucking...
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
I quite like that. I didn't even... I'd not... This is the first I'd looked at Lorgar's rules, because I've never really bothered with Primarchs. Illuminarum, +2 Strength AP2, Melee, Mastercrafted, Armor Bane, and Brutal 2.
Now, does he gain force through becoming corrupted or anything like that, where he was like Lorgar transfigured previously or not?
No.
Oh, okay. So he's not a
so he's
in that way.
Strength 6 base, so this takes him to Strength 8.
Yeah.
And if you take Lorgar transfigured, he takes the... I can't remember what it's called now. Diabolism?
Yeah.
Diabolism.
Yeah, that one.
That one.
Which, if you pass your check before attacks, you become +1 strength and toughness.
Right.
So he could go to Strength 9.
Okay. Cool. Strength 9, Brutal 2. The Brutal's just fucking great. I think that anything with Brutal is just brilliant. Interesting that it's not Foresight, because I think that would have been a bit bananas for him to be double the strength of that weapon or whatever it was.
It would be banana.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Give us the Pale Spear then, John.
The Pale Spear. It's really cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Its strength as user, which we've already discussed, is potentially a bit of an issue against high toughness models. It has Armor Bane. It is instant death, and it's two-handed. It's just...
Yeah.
Like, in the previous edition, instant death was way less prevalent than it is in this edition.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of instant death in this edition by comparison.
And because you can't instant death, you can't actually instant death contemptors and like robots now. It's less powerful.
Yep.
Isn't it?
Absolutely. I think he is.
Here's a quick one for you.
But he is the best force multiplier.
Yeah.
I don't know if this has been fact, but that just says Armor Bane. It doesn't say Armor Bane melee. So can you actually use that Armor Bane in close combat?
Yes.
Oh, mate, if you argued that with me,
yes. If you look at Lorgar, it says Armor Bane.
That's right. Yeah. But it will be Armor Bane.
Armor Bane. So I'd be like, sorry, mate.
Such a fucking cheesy little cunt, then. No, why do you not got any games in? No one's to fucking play you.
I haven't fucking tabled anyone by turn 2 ever.
That's because you haven't played any fucking games to table anyone. That's why.
Cool, right. Interesting. So I think it is quite clear to me that Ferrus Manus, despite having being very lackluster, like lacking rules, has one of the best weapons, I think, above and beyond most others. But in terms of the weapons there, ones that stand out to me is Guilliman's. These 2 weapons I think stands out. And I'm particularly impressed with. But what is really interesting is that definitely Kurz, Korax, and Alfarius are stuck in this area where they, against other Primarchs, I think they're really going to struggle because of the strength of their attacks, I think. And they're going to struggle against things that are higher toughness than them as well.
Don't forget, though, the thing with which we haven't dived into here, is like with Alfarius as example, he's got the ability to give himself additional rules in various turns. So I mean, on the face of it, he looks a bit toot, but actually I think he's
there are other perhaps other things we're not considering, but just on pure weapon stats,
like the Lions of Prime example, because he can give himself any of the rules from the Hexagrammaton, is it?
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
So,
Well, we'll talk.
good.
We will literally talk about that in a second because we've got kind of not long left because we need to wrap up the show. But we're going to quickly go through now. Who are? I tell you what. Let's. I think maybe we should do this on the Primarch list building on a different show. But I do want to get to Lee the 3 Primarchs that we've chosen each. So if we can fast forward to that bit. So let's start off with Lee and Lee for
why
each
me? I don't
Primarch.
like this.
For each Primarch, I want you to just tell us one reason. You don't need to go through kind of the whole thing, but one reason why you've chosen your top 3, please.
Okay. Ferris Manus.
Okay. One reason is it because of his fucking hammer?
Yeah, because he's a fucking absolute shit kicker.
Who's the next
I mean,
one?
that's it.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. It's the brutal 3, right? I think for me is the
and unwieldy. Yeah, he's going at initiative. He's fucking strength 12, brutal 3. I mean, that's just fucking chewing through most things, isn't it?
Yep. So it's probably why Will runs him, right? I think that's,
Yeah.
Who?
Who's your second Primarch, Lee? Yeah, go on, do all 3.
So I picked Alfarius.
Okay, tell us why.
Just because he has so many fucking rules that
You love rules, don't you?
Can't get enough.
yeah, it's almost like we play a game based around rules.
The rules control the fun.
Any rules that stick out to you that are like actually that is the one that really makes him stand out.
Like deep striking 3 units.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
just fucking that alone is fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And then the last one I picked was Horus.
Yeah, so he's a whopping 600 points, isn't he? But what for you makes him worth that 600 then?
I mean, again, he's an absolute shit kicker, but then it's the buffs that he gives to his army as well.
Yeah.
So
I think he can. Can they use his leadership? I think
I think he gives the army stubborn, doesn't he?
Right. Okay. Cool.
Which is pretty fucking huge. I can't remember all the rules off the top of my head, but I remember reading them, thinking, yeah, that's. I think Horus is the one that he can fucking go toe to toe with most Primarchs, and he buffs the fuck out of his army.
Yeah.
Alfarius probably isn't the combat monster, but buffs the absolute fuck out of his army.
Yeah.
And Ferris is just a fucking monster.
He's an absolute dick kicker, isn't he? Yeah. And I from what I recall when we talked about it, he doesn't give Feel No Pain or it will not die to fucking a gajillion.
Feel No Pain 6 up is his warlord trait.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Right, John, let's go to yours. So we've got Horus, Alfarius, and we have got who was the other one you said, Lee?
Ferris Manus
as well.
Yeah.
What are your 3?
In no particular order, I've also chosen old Metal Hands.
Of course, yeah. What's your reason for that one?
I mean, he's a fucking... Look at his face.
Look at his hands. Like, look at them. Fucking hell.
I just think he's just like... I wish he was my Primarch.
Well,
I think his Legion is shit, but I think as a Primarch, I think he's absolutely... Like, he's just got a club, and he's just metal hands and a club, and that's all he's got about him.
Though, didn't he? Really? I mean, that's what he did. Fuck the metal hands. The metal neck
exactly.
would be more useful. Cool. So Ferris Manus and his cold, icy touch with metal hands. Who's next?
Yeah, Sanguinius. It's got to be
choice. Why was that?
Winged boy himself. He's just, again, when you talk about, like, I think he is the most iconic Primarch. Controversial, I know, but I think he is the most iconic Primarch. I think he just represents everything that is so great and so flawed about the Legions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's so perfect, but like imperfectly perfect.
Yeah.
He's a great tactician. He's a wonderful guy. He's an unreal swordsman. He's got fucking huge angel wings. but yet also he's so deeply flawed as well.
Yeah.
I think he's just as a character, I think he's just super. And this is like, rules aside, he's again great. In the game, he's great. Like, but I think when we kind of look at the Heresy as a whole, ignoring the game, I think he's just brilliant. Love him.
Your third?
Now, this was the hardest one, but I'm going to go with Conrad Kurz.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because I love his origin story, but I think in the game, of the reasons we touched on, we talked about mercy and forgiveness. You play him completely different to everything else. I think that's really interesting. I like playing armies in a slightly like more nuanced, different way.
Yeah.
He says playing an entirely shooting machine.
Yeah. I think
I get that. I get the irony
Yeah.
of my thought process here, but I really like what he does for himself. And he's just, again, it's just like, I don't give a fuck about the rest of my legion. Couldn't give a shit about anybody else. I just want to go around and murder some people.
I think in game because he was my fourth choice. I had to sling him out. But I think that lots of things around fear and terror assault and Night Lord's rules can be leveraged that makes him really good.
I genuinely think he is the most terrifying Primarch to play against.
Yeah. In terms of being a normal Marine, you mean?
Yeah. For your army.
Yeah.
Your army, if you come up against coaches, oh, well, everything is dead.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Like, he's just a threat. And even when he's not, and it's the psychological aspect of fielding Comrade Kurz is more interesting than actually fielding Comrade Kurz. I think so. That is my three. So yeah, old Metal Hands, old Golden Wings, and then Comrade.
Cool.
I have to say quickly on that, like we bash the rules sometimes, but they've got it spot on with Conrad, haven't they? Because that's exactly 100%. What he should be. Yeah. He's not the guy. I mean, he can fight Primarch because it's written in the books. You know, he fights three at fucking one time.
Yeah, he doesn't want to, does he? He wants to fucking go cold.
But that's his thing. He wants to go and kill the fucking easy ones. He wants to lurk in the shadows and jump out and fucking murder the guards, not the Primarch. So they've got it bang on there. To be fair.
Yeah,
awesome, cool. Very interesting that you chose 2 out of 3 of those, John, were 2 speedy Primarchs as well. A need for speed. That's quite interesting. So my
honourable mentions, by the way, to Fulgrim.
Fulgrim. Oh, interesting. I thought it was a bit of shit, actually. But
Fulgrim and the Lion, honourable mentions for me.
Okay,
so
cool.
There you go.
Yeah. So for me, I went the Lion, and the reason I chose was that beginning of each turn or each phase, I think probably each turn, you basically choose the Hecanictica rule. So there's some tactical flexibility there, and I thought that was quite cool. I thought you had to quite think about it, but I think the +1 to hit or the +1 to wound would have been really useful in certain situations, which I thought was really, really cool. I chose Alfaris as well. And exactly the same reason as Lee, he, and as John said previously, he is a force multiplier, but I think that he does the most interesting things around army building, and certainly most of those things are based around deep striking. The fact that he can just deep strike 3 Leviathans or 3 Kratos in your army is just fucking insane. Yeah. And I think that Forge World are going to have to... I think the rules writing team are going to have to FAQ it to be infantry, because I think that once you've got Alpha Legion players basically deep striking kind of 3 Talons of Contemptors, it's just once they figure that out, I think there's just going to be like, there's no stopping Alpha Legion. Like, you know, I think it's just fucking insane.
Just quickly heading over to Forge World to buy an Alfaris.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other person I chose is Gilliman, because of the things that he can do to, again, as an army buffer. So his close combat potential with his weapons, as we've seen, I think are really good. But I think where he really comes into his own is being able to basically give his entire army fucking buffs galore. So, for example, he can give battlefield. The controlling player may select one of the following options, but may not select the option twice. So he can give them fleet, counterattack, furious charge, or the stubborn special rule. And I think those can be utilized really well in certain situations. Certainly, if you're just about to do some assaults, having furious charge on a number of units is really useful. If you're about to get assaulted and you can see that happening, the counterattack special rule is going to be really useful to you. And I think as a force kind of like multiplier, I thought he was also really, really good, but also maintained a lot of his close combat prowess in a way that perhaps Alfarius hadn't done. So those were my 3. Really interesting that we haven't all gone for the 3 of the same. Probably because we value different things within army building, and really interesting that we've got kind of quite a broad spectrum of Primarchs that do different things, which probably to me suggests that the Primarchs are generally quite broadly balanced. On the whole, there are some that aren't as good as others.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm much more of a narrative gamer than either of you two, so that's kind of why I.
Good one, yeah, fucking hell.
So that's that kind of really informed a lot of my choices. So.
Of course, but I think that Lorgar corrupted or transfigured or whatever he's called, it seems to be something that would be really, really sort of terrifying. Where before, I think the other thing I would say about Russ is that Russ would have been a top Primarch in 1.0, and I think we probably all would have chosen him previously, but it's interesting that they've nerfed him slightly, that none of us have chosen him. So really,
he was up there on my decisions. I look at him, but yeah, I mean, on combat alone, I don't think he matches up to Ferrous, but
yeah.
I mean, his weapon skill, if you think about his weapon skill on the charge,
yeah,
and then a Primarch in a challenge is hitting him on fucking 5s.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking nuts.
Like, I mean, obviously there's some Primarchs have other rules to get around certain things, but I mean, that's fucking insane when you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Right.
Yeah.
So that's been quite an in-depth discussion on those, and I hope that you guys have taken away from this kind of our Primarch curiousness, and I hope you guys are a bit Primarch curious as well. If there's anything that we've forgotten, missed, isn't obvious, or you kind of think actually, Ferrous Manus is a shit choice because of X, Y, and Z reason, then let us know.
Let us know why you're wrong in the comments.
But I think what we would like to see most out of anything for both our Patreons and our YouTube subscribers in the comments below is who are your top 3 based on the rules, and then let us know. And if you give us a brief reason why for each one, we would love to see those top 3 out of the 18, because it would be really interesting to see if there's things that we've missed, and then maybe we can have a retrospective in 6 months' time about.
It'll be really, really, really interesting to see how far ahead Ferrous Manus is than every other Primarch. just how big is his lead?
Yeah, interesting. Cool. Right, let's finish it off then, Lee, by going through the Roll of Honor. So, like we always say, thank you ever so much to our Patreons for subscribing. We have been overwhelmed by the support that we've got, and it's now made it a self-funding channel in a way that it wasn't previously, and we are really excited to have that up and running. It's now the 2nd month that we are doing it, and our Roll of Honor is those people who pay our kind of top band for being part of our Patreon. So we've got Ben Robinson, Walter Cook the 4th, Ben
Perpetual Walter Cook.
Ben, is it Ben Shankly or is it just Ben?
And Ben and then Shankly.
Ben and then Shankly. Gore Crow seems to be I definitely think that's some sort of relation to Comrade Kurz there. Nicola Prisic, Bradley Schlutz, a bit of a geezer, Bradley. I like him a lot. Patrick Greenstreet, Dell Menmuir, Ashley Bowley, Tom Hayward, Richard Willis, Neil Atherton, Thomas Silverstrin, John McCardle, another hero, Edgar Povolotsky, Mike Dorset-Wolf, Pete Day, Cody Silverstone, and Randy Overland. Now, if you have subscribed to the Patreon in the last few days, then you might not be on here because Lee did this a couple of days ago or even a week ago. So if you're not on there, you will be on there this month when we do our next show as well. Let's take it to the next one, Lee, for our signing off. So don't forget to use the hashtag Heresyhammer. Please, if you've watched this and you don't subscribe to us, why the fuck not? Go and hit that subscribe button. Go like it. Go and comment on this, and then go tell your friends and families about what a great fucking show that we do. And share it with them as
Go
well.
and tell your nan about how fucking good Ferrous Manus is.
Yeah,
I do it immediately.
One of the things what we also want to see is some lists from you guys as well. So if you've got events coming up, then please send us your lists or write them in the comments below. We couldn't give a fuck how you send them to us. Just send them to us because we really want to have a look. So that's heresyhammer30k@gmail.com. And then finally, if you are watching this and you aren't part of the Patreon, why the fuck not? Because you get loads of fucking goodies. You get loads of things through it. I just uploaded yesterday all the stuff that we've got coming up for the event. So you've got tactical objective cards that you can get printed off that you can use. You've got the missions to use those tactical objective cards. You've got a video narrated by me for our narrative for a particular event, and you can steal that if you want to and use it for your own events as well. So get on there. There's loads of stuff, hours worth of work involved in there, and there's lots of other goodies up for grabs as well if you're part of our.
Yeah, we've already started kind of working through what we're going to be supplying for the first like goodie bag for the Praetors, and I must say it is going to be fire. But the tactical objective cards are worth the price for admission on their own.
Yeah, just on their own. We're looking to expand those further as well. But also, don't forget, you get 2 extra bonus shows as part of being part of the Patreon. This month, we are looking at veterans and artillery, and our first show will be about veterans and how to kit out your veterans. I got that ready this morning, and already I've got a raging hard on for veteran squads. So come and join me and my raging hard on when we go through
on the new Heresyhammer
OnlyFans. We look forward to greeting you on the Patreon for that one. Anyway, take it easy, guys. We hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed this one, and take care and see you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.